Chapter 304. Bufang sat cross-legged in his tent and rested for a while to recover some of his true energy. Since the system's dimensional storage was prohibited, Bufang was unable to take out the oyster pancake that he stored in the storage space. This made him a little speechless. Even though he did not have the oyster pancake, after resting for a while, his true energy had recovered by more than half. Bufang did not cultivate any cultivation technique, but the energy vortex within his dantian spun at a speed that was comparable to the energy vortex of some high-grade cultivation technique. After recovering his true energy, Bufang walked out of the tent. Outside the tent were the corpses of 9 huge spirit beasts. These were the 9 spirit beasts that he had just hunted. The entire campsite was filled with the terrifying aura of these 7th-grade spirit beasts. The atmosphere was oppressive and heavy, causing many people to leave their tent. Bufang washed his hands and then walked toward the nearest spirit beast. This was a fire lion that was killed by Yen. No one knew how Yen managed to kill this fire lion, but there was not a single scar on its body. Green smoke curled around his hand and the dragon bone kitchen knife once again appeared in it. With a twirl of the knife, Bufang circled around the fire lion. What he needed to do now was to process these ingredients. He displayed the meteor cutting technique. The kitchen knife in his hand seemed to have turned into a nimble spirit as it rapidly circulated around the fire lion's body. A pick, a gouge, a slice, and a chop. The pinnacle of his cutting technique was vividly displayed by him. In a short while, the fur of the entire fire lion was completely peeled off and even the bones were dug out. As the kitchen knife moved, the tender lion meat, which seemed to have flames circulating around it, was processed into a large pot. The pot was as hot as a furnace. It was the result of the fire lion's meat being roasted. Even though the fire lion was dead, its meat was still like burning charcoal. After processing the lion meat, Bufang dusted his hands and continued on to the next spirit beast. While processing the spirit beast's corpse, he conveniently asked Long Kai to find some spirit energy vegetables. He needed a large amount of spirit energy vegetables. Perhaps they did not need to be of a high grade, but they had to be fresh and contain a little bit of spirit energy. Long Kai agreed and quickly flew around the entire city. After Bufang finished dealing with the 9 spirit beasts, he returned with a few cooks carrying a few baskets. The spirit energy vegetables were all in this basket. Bufang had also finished dealing with the 9 spirit beasts. The cook's army units who had stepped into the camp were all dumbstruck, and their faces were filled with shock. Because in their eyes there were actually skeletons placed behind Bufang. There wasn't even a single strand of flesh on those skeletons. They had all been scraped clean. Many people were speechless. For an ordinary person to achieve such a feat was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Yet, in such a short period of time, so many spiritual beasts were cleanly separated. This Senior Bu's knife skill is simply amazing. 9 large pots were filled to the brim with spirit beast meat, and several baskets were filled with fresh spirit energy vegetables. Bufang ordered the cook's army units to carry the processed ingredients to the camp in the plaza. There, 9 large pots were placed in the middle, and a raging flame was burning within them. Smoke soared into the sky, and flames overflowed in all directions. Yen and the others were calm and unruffled, especially Yen. This time, she had worked hard for half a day. If Bufang's dishes did not satisfy her, then she would be in a bad mood. Once she was in a bad mood, even she was afraid of herself. Tang Yin smacked his lips as he looked at Senior Bu, who was calmly walking in front of him. Senior Bu was always so calm. The 9 heavy pots landed on the ground with a loud thud. Many people stretched their necks to look at the 9 pot. The pots were actually filled with fresh and tender spirit beast meat. The rich spirit energy instantly permeated the entire camp, causing them to reveal expressions of surprise. These were the meat of 9 7th-grade spirit beasts. Simply terrifying. An army banquet meant that all the soldiers would be able to taste delicious food. In order to make a dish that could be eaten by the entire army, using these 9 large pots was more or less the same. Bufang once again used clean water to wash his palms. His slender and fair palms were as beautiful as the palms of a woman. Then, Bufang clapped his hands and actually lifted one of the pots. He directly leaped up. He stepped on the edge of the pot. Taking a deep breath, Bufang's expression became solemn. Whether or not the last dish that could satisfy the system would appear depended on this. If he failed again, then even Bufang would not be able to do anything. With a clap of his hands, true energy surged, and a piece of fire lion meat that resembled burning charcoal flew out. This is the meat of a 7th-grade fire lion. Look at the patterns on it, it is like a beautiful painting. Moreover, it occasionally sparkles. Owner Bu handled it very well. This fire lion meat is completely flawless. It is the best fire lion meat. And Ai Yen exclaimed in admiration. She was well versed in gourmet delicacies, so she explained to the crowd. Piece after piece of fire lion meat was thrown into the wok. Unexpectedly, it was like flower petals were placed at the bottom of the wok, completely filling up the bottom. When such a large amount of meat was suddenly thrown into the scorching wok, the sizzling sound of oil could be heard. Oil splattered everywhere, accompanied by thick smoke and a rich aroma of meat that rose into the air. Vegetables. Bufang looked at Long Kai and calmly spat out a word. Long Kai understood. He picked up a basket and threw it toward Bufang. Bufang caught the basket, and with a light tap of his foot on the edge of the wok, his body floated up once more. With a casual pull of his hand, a few vegetable leaves gently floated out of the basket. It was a white vegetable filled with spirit energy. It was a specialty of the Western Mystery City. This is green cloud vegetable, a specialty of the Western Mystery City. Everyone should be familiar with it. It has an excellent crispy texture and is full of moisture, Ai Yen said. Her eyes lit up, filled with curiosity. She really couldn't tell what dish Bufang was going to cook. He had already used 2 ingredients. Could it be that he wanted to cook a spirit beast in one wok? If that was the case, it was quite fitting for the current situation. However, Bufang's next action completely shattered her conjecture. That was because Bufang landed on the ground and changed to another pot. This pot was filled with giant iguana meat. Everyone had tasted giant iguana meat before. The taste of the flower iguana was simply so delicious that it made people want to swallow it. Piece after piece of giant iguana meat was taken out by Bufang and placed in the wok, above the green cloud vegetable. The spiritual qi of the 3 different ingredients suddenly became dense and mixed together, forming a unique kind of meaning. 3 ingredients. What dish is Owner Bu going to cook? Ai Yen sucked in a breath of cold air. Not only her, but the others also did the same. This was because 2 7th-grade spirit beast ingredients and a spirit energy vegetable were mixed into one dish. The spirit energy content was simply astonishing, and it was too difficult to cook it well. Ordinary chefs were very clear about this principle. The more spirit energy ingredients there were, the harder it was to cook. The 3rd piece of spirit beast meat was the meat of the mammoth that Whitey had smashed to death with its fists. The thorn elephant's meat was like cream. After the thorns were removed and the armor-like skin was peeled off, the soft, creamy meat was revealed. The thorn elephant's meat was cut into pieces, which looked like tender and fragrant tofu. Then, he placed them on the table. Next, he used the same method to mix the spirit energy vegetable and the spirit beast meat into the wok. The big wok was actually filled to the brim with so many ingredients. Bufang landed on the ground and picked up dozens of white radishes. With the meteor cutting technique, he rapidly cut the white radishes. Soon, so many white radishes were carved and turned into a roaring white jade fire lion. It fell into the center of the wok and stood proudly, looking lifelike. Good cutting technique! Bufang's knife skills caused the entire hall to cheer. No one understood what dish he was going to cook, but they could see the magnificence of his knife skills. The carving of the fire lion looked as if it had come to life, as if it had a soul. The next 9 wok were all arranged in the same way. The only difference was that the spirit beasts carved in each wok were different. There was a thorn elephant, an old mountain tortoise, and so on. A spirit beast was carved in each wok, both exquisite and gorgeous. After pouring clear water into each wok, Bufang sat cross-legged in the center of the 9 wok. While recovering his true energy, his mind sensed the changes of the ingredients in the wok. Arranging the ingredients in each wok and controlling the flow of spirit energy in the dish was the most important factor that would affect the taste of a dish. Everyone held their breaths as they looked at the 9 cauldrons that were filled to the brim. Their hearts were filled with nervousness and anticipation. They had never seen such a dish before. Even Yen had never seen it before. However, it was precisely because of the unknown that they were curious. Time passed quietly. Within the campsite, only the crackling sounds of charcoal could be heard. Suddenly, Bufang, who had his eyes closed, opened them. There was a trace of excitement and seriousness in his eyes. The next step was the most important step in cooking the premium wok of fortunes. He had to control the spirit energy evenly. Otherwise, if the spirit energy of so many 7th-grade spirit beasts was activated, the wok would explode. Chapter 305. Bufang stood up, leaped up, and stopped in front of a big wok. His eyes fell on the inside of the wok. Bufang's mind followed the true energy and sank into the wok, constantly guiding the flow of spirit energy. The premium wok of fortunes is complete. The night of the Northwest Plain was a little lonely and deep. This was a land stained with blood, and the dust of history had settled here. Yan's eyes lit up, as if she had seen her favorite prey. The faces of the surrounding people were filled with amazement. They raised their heads and looked at Bufang, who was surrounded by wisps of dense energy. At this moment, Bufang was like a banished immortal. The aroma wafted for 10 miles, and almost everyone could smell it. However, once it was smoothed out, it became very easy. What a unique aroma! It's not very strong? Dense steam rose up, accompanied by dense spirit energy. This mist enveloped the white jade fire lion, which was sitting in the center of the wok, making it seem as if it had come to life. The aroma slowly drifted over, wrapping around everyone's noses, making them feel intoxicated. With a light tap of his foot, Bufang's body immediately floated up like a swallow and landed on the second wok. Coincidentally, this wok was boiling at this moment. Rumble! They were lifelike and incomparably vivid. Amidst the endless yellow sand, an army was lurking in the night, not attracting the slightest attention. It was heading toward the western mystery city, which had just experienced a spirit beast tide. Fire lions, thorn mammoths, old mountain tortoises, and so on. The tip of Bufang's feet touched the edge of the wok. Bufang bent one knee and stood up. The true energy cyclone in his energy core revolved, and true energy flowed through his legs and into the wok. The aroma of the 9 wok and the opportunity attracted each other, forming a vague array that made his mind tremble slightly. Waves of beast roars resounded in his ears, making him feel as if he was in a dream. Yen also stuck out her rosy tongue and licked her red lip. Her eyes focused, and she became serious. Even Kong Xian, who had always disliked Bufang, subconsciously rubbed his belly and smacked his lip. Bufang also thought it was a little funny. Setting up an array with food? The soldiers chattered non-stop, but there was no doubt that everyone was looking at the 9 cauldrons excitedly. Bufang waved his hand casually, sweeping away the dense mist that lingered around him, and walked out of the center of the 9 woks. With the help of the holy emissary, they had conquered many cities along the way. Every time, everything went smoothly. They were already very convinced of the holy emissary. This attack on Western Mystery City was also the holy emissary's idea. Looking at the 9 pots from the outside was a different experience. When Bufang finished controlling the 9th wok, 9 thick fragrances burst out from the 9 wok. They were like giant dragons spiraling up into the sky, coiling around the vault of heaven. Green smoke curled around Bufang's hand. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife spun unceasingly in his hand, creating an incomparably dazzling knife flower. Then, with a bang, it turned into green smoke and dissipated. His indifferent voice carried a trace of relief as it reverberated. Taking advantage of the night to attack Western Mystery City will mean that we have completed the High Priestess task. When the time comes, we can return and hand over the spirit essence to the High Priestess, a hoarse voice said. The 2 figures holding the jade talisman array respectfully bowed to him. The spirit beast tide had just retreated, so it was the best time for the army to set out. They had been waiting for this opportunity. Taking advantage of the fact that Western Mystery City had just experienced a terrifying spirit beast tide, they launched a surprise attack and swiftly took down the ancient city of the Light Wind Empire, Western Mystery City. Young lady, you're really scary. Everyone was unable to suppress the hunger in their stomachs. Many voices rang out at the same time, as if thunder had burst forth. He originally wanted to think about it carefully, but the exclamations around him interrupted his thoughts and made him turn his head to look at the crowd. 3 figures were circling around. 2 of them were holding 5 jade talismans in one hand. The jade talismans were glowing. 7th-grade spirit beast ingredients exploding. The power was unimaginable. It was possible that the entire campsite would be flattened. The soup in the wok was boiling, but it was not because of the heat. Instead, it was because the spirit energy in the ingredients was constantly rising and rushing out of the wok. That was the spirit beast that had been killed. Yen fiercely stomped on the ground and her figure flew out. She didn't care about her image at all as she grabbed onto Bufang's shoulders. Her face was almost touching Bufang's face. When Bufang moved on to the 3rd wok, the aroma of the 2nd wok drifted out. There's a fragrance. These different scents brought with them different meanings, causing one to be intoxicated by them. Even if the other party has the support of the Celestial Arcanum sex experts, we are not afraid. With the elders, that bunch of trash from the Celestial Arcanum sect will die without a doubt. Yen stared at Bufang from afar. She had always wanted to learn how to control true energy because it was too shocking. How could one control true energy to such a precise degree? His true energy was like a stabilizer. Once it entered the wok, the boiling wok calmed down. The surging spirit energy also gradually retracted. Kong Xian squinted his eyes. His eyes were filled with disdain. Wasn't he just a chef? What was so great about him? Bufang returned to the ground and sat cross-legged in the middle of the 9 wok. He was in a trance. It was still mellow and rich, but it was different from the 1st wok. Compared to the 1st wok, this aroma had a calmness to it. The 1st wok had a manic and unrestrained feeling. Done? All of a sudden, Yen, who had been staring at Bufang's figure, wrinkled her delicate nose slightly, and her eyes lit up. One of them was holding a jade talisman that was a little broken, and its radiance was a little dim. However, from time to time, there would be white mist-forming human faces floating across the magic array, roaring and howling. Idiot, we just started cooking. The spirit beast meat isn't even cooked yet. How could the aroma be so rich? Bufang frowned. This was the most difficult step. If he didn't handle it well, it would be disastrous if the wok exploded. However, the aroma that lingered in the air didn't stop. Instead, it lured everyone's appetite, causing their stomachs to rumble. Tang Yin was also very nervous. However, this magic array was a little blurry, as if it would break at the slightest touch. In a trance, Bufang could even feel the heaven-shaking roar of the fire lion. It was a mellow aroma that contained an indescribable feeling. Respectful voices rose and fell, followed by laughter. The laughter seemed to be transmitted to the 2 crescent moons in the sky, which were blooming with cold radiance. In the army, Everyone was stunned for a moment, then they cried out in surprise. With the help of the elders, we will definitely be able to take down Western Mystery City. Luo City was brightly lit. With a loud rumble, the ancient city gate opened. Maybe it was really possible. Why couldn't delicacies be used to set up magic arrays? Bufang took a deep breath, narrowed his eyes, and thought to himself. Nowadays, in their army, the words of the divine emissaries were not any weaker than those of the commanders. This was because the divine emissaries had given them power, making them invincible. Feeling the warmth in front of him, the corners of Bufang's mouth twitched. This was an extremely difficult process, but it was also an extremely important one. Owner Bu, give this old lady a bowl first. The surrounding people were stunned. This was the first time they saw a dish that could manifest itself. Could it still be eaten? Even though she did not know what kind of dish Bufang was cooking, she was very clear that the real test for Bufang was about to begin. That was because the spirit energy had already begun to gush out after being boiled. There were so many pieces of 7th-grade spirit beast meat, and every single one of them was a lord of a territory with their own dignity. Once their energies collided with each other, it would result in a huge explosion. The aroma emitted from each wok seemed to represent the different meanings of each spirit beast. Bufang's mind was constantly sensing the heat of each wok, so he knew exactly when to deal with which wok. This plan was not only arranged by their commander, but also by the divine emissaries wrapped in black robes. If it were not for his expressionless face, Bufang would definitely be a romantic young man who could charm thousands of girls. A neat and orderly army marched out. Lin led his army towards the Western Mystery City with a solemn look on his face. The 9 woks were faintly glowing. Above them, there seemed to be spirit beasts entrenched. The fire lion was violent and turbulent, the thorn mammoth was calm and ruthless, and the old mountain tortoise was calm and mature. Chapter 306. The tip of Bufang's feet stomped on the ground, and his figure floated backward for a distance. He calmly looked at Yen, whose eyes were sparkling with excitement. "Wait," Bufang said. After saying that, he took out a ceramic bowl and leaped up. He lightly landed on the edge of the wok and scooped up a bowl of thick soup with a few pieces of meat in it. There were 9 types of spirit beast meat in the wok, and Bufang didn't know which type of spirit beast meat he scooped up for Yen. Yen received the ceramic bowl and licked her lip. She moved her nose close to the bowl and took a deep breath. Instantly, the rich aroma of the meat rushed into her nose, causing her face to reveal a trace of intoxication. "It's thick, but it doesn't disperse. It's really fragrant." The flavor of the spirit beast meat was completely sealed in the soup through the cooking method, and it has a unique fragrance. Coupled with the soup made from the 9 types of spirit beast meat, it's simply a delicacy in the world. Before Yen drank the soup, she first praised Bufang's dish. He had to admit that this dish really made him exclaim in admiration. Whether it was the cooking method or the control of spirit energy, both had reached the pinnacle. Using a porcelain spoon to scoop up a spoonful of soup, Yen didn't drink it immediately. Instead, she placed the spoonful of soup in front of her eyes. The soup seemed to be multicolored, as though there was a rainbow twisting and moving on the surface of the soup. The aroma overflowed from the soup, causing Yen to bite her lips. Then, she swallowed it. The warm meat soup wasn't as hot as she imagined it to be. Even though it looked boiling hot, the temperature was just right when it entered her mouth. Yen narrowed her eyes as she felt the soup moving in her mouth. It was as though it was passing through 9 winding streams. Every time she swallowed a mouthful, she could feel a different taste gently caressing the walls of her mouth. There was no need to describe the spiritual energy in the soup. Because of Bufang's true energy cooking method, the spiritual energy was perfectly wrapped in it. Yen could taste the taste of Owner Bu from it. The cooking method of this thick soup was very similar to the fish head tofu soup in Owner Bu's restaurant. Similarly, the taste of the soup was perfectly preserved, allowing the spiritual energy to burst forth in the mouth like an aroma bomb. The difference was that this time, there seemed to be 9 aroma bombs exploding one after another. It made Enai Yin feel as though her entire body was about to ascend. Enai Yan's eyes widened as she looked at Bufang and nodded repeatedly. "Try this piece of meat," Bufang said. Enai Yin did as he was told and picked up a piece of rosy white spirit beast meat. The fat in this spirit beast meat was very uniform and the lines on it were like a beautiful painting that was reflected in his eyes. "What meat is this?" Enai Yin asked curiously. Because Bufang cooked all 9 kinds of spirit beast meat in the same pot, she didn't know what kind of meat it was. Bufang raised his eyebrows. Although he had never tasted this before, he remembered the order in which the spirit beast meat was placed. "This is the meat of a 7th-grade spirit beast, the old mountain tortoise," Bufang answered. "The meat of an old mountain tortoise?" Enai Yin gave a soft "oh" before stuffing the entire piece of meat into her mouth. Her cheeks bulged as she chewed with her eyes wide open. As she chewed, her eyes gradually brightened. "So fragrant! So full! So bouncy!" Enai Yin exclaimed in admiration. This piece of meat seemed to be bouncing in her mouth. It had a slight crispness as it slapped against the walls of her mouth. Moreover, this piece of meat was actually not hard to chew. Some 7th-grade spirit beast's meat would be too strong, causing the muscles of their entire body to tighten together. That kind of meat would appear very tough and hard to chew. That kind of meat would affect the taste. However, even though the old mountain tortoise's meat was tough, it was still very brittle and could be easily bitten off. While Enai Yin was engrossed in the delicacy of the premium wok of fortunes, the others also swarmed over and began to fight over the dishes. However, Bufang had cooked enough, so everyone was able to get a bowl. The reason why the premium wok of fortunes was called the wok of fortunes was because of its name. Regardless of whether it was a wok of fortunes or not, it was still cooked using the meat of a 7th-grade spirit beast. The energy and spirit energy contained within the meat was not something an ordinary person could withstand. Normally, only people with a cultivation level of 3rd-grade battlemaniac and above could taste it. However, Bufang added a lot of spirit energy vegetables and used his own cooking method to guide the true energy within. This allowed the originally violent spirit energy to become much gentler after being fused and smoothed out, allowing everyone to taste it. That was because there was a mix of good and bad people in the army, especially in the 3rd Corps. Some people had a higher cultivation level and could reach the level of 3rd-grade battlemaniac, but others could not. After all, it was a banquet for the entire army, so it was only natural that everyone would be able to eat it. Someone was given a piece of the thorn elephant's meat. After the meat was cooked, it was not much different from tofu. However, compared to tofu, it was much more fragrant and could nourish the body. The soldiers who ate the thorn elephant's meat felt as if there was a raging flame burning within their bodies. Their true energy began to rapidly revolve. This scene continued to occur on the battlefield. There were 9 woks, and the amount was large enough for everyone in the 3rd Corps to taste the delicacy. Moreover, many soldiers from the 1st and 2nd Corps ran over to get a share. They were so excited by the delicacy that they could not even walk. As for the soldiers who ate the premium wok of fortunes, it was as if they had really obtained a fortune. The energy vortex within their dantian revolved rapidly, and the warm meat soup still lingered within their bodies. It was as if a dense hot energy was guiding them and creating fortunes for them. There were many soldiers in the 3rd Corps. Although they were slightly inferior to the 2nd Corps, it was still a considerable number. Among the soldiers, many of them had a breakthrough in their energy and advanced. Some of them also had their cultivation level increased. Although they did not break through, their mental state and combat strength were much stronger than before. The overall quality of the 3rd Corps was actually raised by a level because of this dish. It was not inferior to the first core at all. As the city lord of the Western Mystery City, Kong Yao naturally could not remain calm in the face of such a delicacy. He scooped up a bowl and carefully tasted it. However, the more he tasted, the more astonished he became. In the end, he sighed. Kong Xian also scooped up a bowl. After drinking it, he did not say anything. Although this bowl of soup did not allow him to break through, it did cause his energy to solidify a little. He was a 7th grade battle saint. Now that his cultivation level was showing signs of breaking through, it was simply inconceivable. Was this really just a dish? Tang Yin also got a bowl. He had always been very confident in Bu Fang's dishes, so he drank it with relish. After finishing one bowl, he actually felt like he was still not satisfied and wanted another bowl. Bu Fang stood where he was, rubbing his chin with a frown. His appearance made the people around him not dare to disturb him. This premium walk of fortunes made everyone treat Bu Fang with much more respect. Soon, Bu Fang's tightly knitted brows relaxed. Then, the corners of his mouth slightly curled up. He was a little excited because his premium walk of fortunes had obtained the system's approval. As the third dish to be approved by the system, Bu Fang had finally completed the system's task. Patting his cheeks, Bu Fang let out a long breath. He scooped up a bowl of soup and picked up a piece of fire lion meat. The fire lion meat was very fresh and tender. Although it had been cooked and became cooked, the lines on the meat were still very obvious. Moreover, the degree of scalding heat made it more flavorful than the other meat. This was also the reason why Bu Fang chose to put the fire lion meat at the bottom of the wok. Because the fire lion meat was not easy to cook, and the flavor could be better released. After eating a mouthful of meat and drinking a mouthful of soup, Bu Fang, who was much more relaxed, actually felt a little happy. Outside the Western Mystery City, the city was incomparably noisy. The soldiers on the city wall frequently turned their heads to look at the campsite. It was said that there were people eating delicious food there. It was simply too cruel. While others were eating delicious food, they had to patrol the ice-cold city wall. If they could also be among the crowd and drink a steaming hot and fragrant meat soup, how wonderful would that be? Below the city wall, a group of black shadows suddenly stuck to the top of the city wall. They were the elites of Mo Lin army, and each of them was an expert in breaking through. Although the city wall of the Western Mystery City was very tall, it was very easy for them to climb up. After climbing for a while like a lizard, they rushed to the top of the city wall. A Western Mystery City guard came back to his senses and found that there was an extra figure in front of him. He immediately became angry and drew his long sword. However, an even faster ray of light flashed by and directly slashed the guard's neck. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, a group of people climbed up from the bottom of the city wall, rushed up the city wall, and fought with the guards on the city wall. Their battle prowess was unexpectedly strong. Dealing with these ordinary guards, they only needed a few moves to deal with them. Dang dang dang! The city bell of the Western Mystery City rang. Without a doubt, this meant that there was an enemy invasion. After killing the guards on the city wall, the soldiers rushed down the city wall, intending to open the city gate. Boom boom! The soldiers of the First Army of the Western Mystery City rushed over. In fact, they had been paying attention to the situation at the city gate. When they saw someone rushing over, they immediately took action. A chaotic battle immediately broke out at the city gate. Boom boom boom! The ancient city gate of the Western Mystery City suffered a heavy impact, as if a giant beast was constantly pounding on it. Outside the Western Mystery City, 3 figures floated in the void. One of them raised his fist. Suddenly, monstrous true energy gathered and turned into a fist shadow, which smashed fiercely against the city gate. With the third punch, the city gate of the Western Mystery City was finally smashed open. War cries and screams instantly poured into the Western Mystery City. The soldiers, who had just finished their military feast, immediately became spirited. The complexions of the Western Mystery City Lord Kong Yao and General Kong Xian changed, and they hurriedly rushed toward the city gate. And Ai Yen squatted beside a big pot, as light as a swallow. She was happily drinking the boiling meat soup and eating the tender spirit beast meat. She did not hear the war cries at all. Bufang, on the other hand, looked at the city gate with a puzzled expression. The sky was filled with flames and the sounds of war were rising. Chapter 307. Mo Lin brandished his spear and bellowed. The soldiers behind him roared as they charged toward the city. Every one of these soldiers was very powerful. After being strengthened by the sacred envoy's elixir, they were the cream of the crop. This was why Mo Lin was confident that he could take down the Western Mystery City. As an ancient city of the Light Wind Empire, the Western Mystery City had a long history and a deep foundation. It could be said that the Western Mystery Army was independent of the Empire's army and had formed its own system. The fact that they were able to guard the Northwest Plains for so many years and stand firm against the waves of spirit beasts from the 100,000 mountains was enough to prove their strength. However, Mo Lin was confident because he had faith in the Sacred Envoy. With the help of the Sacred Envoy, his army had never been defeated before. The city gate of the Western Mystery City was breached, and Mo Lin's army rushed into the city. The army of the Western Mystery City met the attack in a panic. Perhaps because the enemy's sneak attack was too unexpected, the Western Mystery Army was forced to retreat step by step. These were the elite troops of the Western Mystery Army. The glint of swords and the sound of battle echoed throughout the ancient city. The citizens of the Western Mystery City hid in their houses in fear. War was cruel and merciless. In the face of war, they could only pray helplessly. 3 figures floated in the void. The stench of blood from the Western Mystery City soared into the sky. Soul essences howled miserably as they were sucked out of the corpses by an invisible suction force. They were absorbed into the talisman array in the hands of the Shura sect warrior in the sky. Carefree laughter resounded from the mouths of the 3 warriors. Suddenly, from the depths of the Western Mystery City came a series of battle cries. The laughter of the Shura sect warrior immediately stopped. Mo Lin brandished his blood-splattered spear and stared at the battle cries coming from the city. One by one, the soldiers of the Western Mystery City charged out from the depths of the city. Zhu Yu, Kong Xian, these were the higher-ups of the Western Mystery City. Mo Lin's face turned solemn. He knew that the real battle had just begun. But wasn't the momentum of the Western Mystery Army a little too strong? Mo Lin felt very strange. This group of soldiers charging out from the city had an incomparably strong momentum. It was as if their blood was about to gush out. It was very strange. This was the Shixian Third Army. Logically speaking, it should be the weakest army in the Shixian army. Zhu Yu urged his horse forward. His face was flushed red, and there seemed to be a raging flame surging within his body. After eating a bowl of spirit beast meat from the Grade 1 Walk of Fortunes, Zhu Yu felt the true energy in his body surging. It was as if he had an inexhaustible amount of energy. Kill! Slaughter these bastards! Zhu Yu roared, and immediately led his soldiers to charge into the crowd. He waved his sword, and with each slash, he killed a person. Mo Lin bellowed furiously as he clashed with Zhu Yu. Kong Xian's aura was very powerful. As a 7th-grade battle saint, he was the Western Mystery City's safeguard. But this time, he was intercepted by a figure. It was a black-robed expert holding 5 floating jade talismans in one hand. Without a doubt, this expert was also a 7th-grade battle saint. He was able to float in the air, and gave off a terrifying sense of danger. Invading my Western Mystery City. Kill without mercy. However, Kong Xian was fearless. With a clanging sound, true energy gushed out from his body as he charged toward the black-robed man. In an instant, the city gate had turned into an Azura hell. It had become a terrifying battlefield. Mo Lin and Zhu Yu fought, but the more they fought, the more astonished he became. He realized that Zhu Yu seemed to be different from before. He became more ruthless, more powerful, and his aura became more powerful. How could this be? How long had it been? Previously, Zhu Yu was not able to give him such a huge pressure. Mo Lin's pupils shrank. He turned his head to look at his surroundings, and was shocked to find that his army seemed to be being crushed. How is this possible? Mo Lin bellowed furiously. All around him, the soldiers of the Third Army were not afraid of death. They were actually suppressing Mo Lin's army and forcing them to retreat. They were like a torrent of steel that surged forward, destroying everything in their path. This Third Army is fake, right? Weren't they so weak before? Mo Lin's heart was filled with unwillingness. He watched as his troops retreated step by step and looked at the Third Army that seemed to be on steroid. He was extremely puzzled. Haha, this feels great. Zhu Yu laughed heartily. Of course, he knew why the Third Army was so ferocious. It was because they had just eaten a delicacy that they had never tasted before. That premium walk of fortunes really brought them endless opportunities. Many of them had a breakthrough and their cultivation level had increased. The quality of the entire Third Army had improved by a large margin. Under such circumstances, the Third Army's morale was at its peak and its combat strength was at its strongest. Even if they were to encounter the Western Mystery First Army, they would still be able to F***ck them up. Why would they be afraid of a group of invaders? I'll F***ck you to death. Up in the sky, the remaining two Shura sect warriors narrowed their eyes. They were also a little surprised. They did not expect Mo Lin's army to be so miserably suppressed. You go. The Western Mystery City must be conquered. This is the condition that the High Priestess promised King Yu. A hoarse voice calmly rang out. Then, the figure holding the broken jade talisman with one hand sped forward. He took a few steps forward and stood in the sky. The black robe on his body fluttered in the wind as he stood proudly above the Western Mystery Third Army. The corners of his mouth curled up, revealing a cruel smile. So many soul essences. It really makes my blood boil. The black-robed man suddenly whistled. Then, a large flock of pitch-black birds that resembled sparrows flew out from his black robe. The birds flapped their wings. Each and every one of them was densely packed. It was as if they had transformed into a dark cloud that covered the sky. They charged toward the Western Mystery Third Army. My precious poisonous sparrows, enjoy this delicious flesh and blood to your heart's content. The black-robed warrior held the jade talisman with one hand. His face revealed a blissful expression and he was full of smiles. These densely packed poisonous birds flapped their wings, and each of them was like a sharp sword that pierced through the void. Every time they attacked, they would pierce through a figure's chest. The Western Mystery Third Army suffered heavy casualties in an instant. Damn it! Did a battle saint expert make a move? Zhu Yu's pupils shrank as he looked at the densely packed poisonous sparrows that were flying toward them. Ai Yen finished another bowl of premium wok of fortunes. She licked her lips with her small tongue, causing her tender and alluring lips to become even more moist and tender. Delicious. Owner Bu really didn't lie to me. Not bad, not bad. Master, the battle outside has started. Shouldn't we go and help? Tang Yin anxiously asked. The battle cries and the terrifying waves of true energy gave him a bad premonition. How many people would die in this battle? How many soul essences would the Shura sect collect? I know. The Western Mystery Third Army just ate Owner Bu's premium wok of fortunes. Now their morale is at its peak. It won't be a problem for them to deal with the Western Mystery First Army. Why are you so anxious? Ai Yen put down her bowl and dusted her hands. Her gaze shifted toward Owner Bu. Owner Bu, do you want to go over and take a look? Not interested. Bu Fong shook his head. He didn't have much interest in battles to begin with. He would rather stay and drink a few more bowls of premium Wok of Fortunes, and Yen rolled her eyes at him. She knew that with Owner Boo's apathetic temperament, he definitely wouldn't be interested in joining the fray. Therefore, she didn't waste any more time and brought Tang Yin with her as she headed toward the battlefield. Bufang watched as she left. He leisurely scooped a bowl of premium Wok of Fortunes and continued eating. He couldn't let such a delicious dish go to waste. Not long after, a terrifying battle broke out in the sky. The waves of true energy from 8th grade war gods burst forth. Every strike was like a violent explosion. Bufang was in a cheerful and relaxed mood. He had already completed the system's mission, so there was no pressure in his heart. He happily finished a bowl of premium Wok of Fortunes. This was probably his last meal in the barrack. Since the mission was completed, it was about time for the system to arrange for him to return. After almost half a month of training, his understanding of culinary arts had deepened. "You guys come over and eat with us." Bufang turned his head to look at the cook's army unit, who were carefully standing at the side. He waved his hand at them and said. The cook's army unit was taken aback. Then, they revealed an excited expression. They had long wanted to taste this delicacy. The meaty aroma that permeated the air made them swallow their saliva uncontrollably. There wasn't much left in the 9 premium Wok of Fortunes. After being divided among the cook's army unit, it was basically a forfeit. Boom! Suddenly, a burst of explosions resounded. Several figures were thrown in from the outside. Tang Yin's face was deathly pale. His breathing was shallow. Blood spurted out from his body, and hideous bloody holes appeared on his body. A burst of bird screeches resounded. Bufang looked into the distance. There, a group of poisonous sparrows surrounded a black-robed man and floated over. The black-robed man was actually holding a jade talisman that Bufang was familiar with. This jade talisman seems somewhat familiar, Bufang muttered. Then, he suddenly realized that the jade talisman was the one that emitted the Supreme Being Sword Will, which blasted Xiao Bai into the ground. Didn't the jade talisman array escape? Why did it come back? Could it be that it was back to take revenge? The black-robed man's face was cold and mocking. The trash of the Pavilion of Heavenly Mysteries is really weak. My babies, that trash belongs to you now. Enjoy this delicious meat to your heart's content. The black-robed man caressed the head of a pitch-black sparrow and gently said. Then, with a pat, the flock of poisonous sparrows transformed into a black cloud and charged over. Tang Yin's complexion instantly turned deathly pale. The eyes of the densely packed poisonous sparrows emitted a ruthless red glow. They flew over with a murderous intent. Bufang furrowed his brows. He stood behind Tang Yin and also felt the terrifying ruthless energy emitted by the flock of poisonous sparrows. Tang Yin could be considered an acquaintance of Bufang, so he couldn't let him die just like that. Moreover, the other party was obviously back to take revenge. All the more reason for Bufang to not retreat. Looking at the flock of chirping bloody sparrows, green smoke suddenly curled around Bufang's hand. A pitch-black kitchen knife appeared in his hand. The kitchen knife spun in his hand as Bufang stared at the densely packed flock of poisonous sparrows. In his eyes, these poisonous sparrows seemed to have transformed into huge carrots. Chapter 308. It was time for him to show his true knife skills. Looking at the flying carrots, no, the black poisonous sparrows, Bufang slightly narrowed his eyes. The dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand vibrated and spun at high speed, creating a dazzling scene. He held his breath and stared at the chirping poisonous sparrows with a bloodthirsty glint in their eyes. His mind gradually tensed up. Tang Yin fell to the ground. His complexion was extremely pale, probably caused by excessive blood loss. He also sensed these poisonous sparrows, and his mind trembled. He felt an aura of death shrouding his body. Phew! The soft exhalation became very obvious at this moment. In the next moment, Tang Yin's eyes suddenly widened because he saw an inconceivable scene in front of him. In the dark night, a cold radiance sprinkled down like a meteor tearing through the sky. As the kitchen knife spun, it was like a falling meteor. It streaked across his eyes and was reflected in the depths of his pupils, giving him an unforgettable impression. The meteor knife skill. Bu Fang's indifferent voice resounded. Then, the densely packed poisonous sparrows rumbled and charged toward him. Splatter! Splatter! Swoosh! Swoosh! Bu Fang's face was expressionless as he held the kitchen knife. The speed at which he chopped down was so fast that it was almost impossible to catch. Rays of chilling knife light sliced through the bodies of the poisonous sparrows. The grade of these poisonous sparrows was not high. Each of them was roughly equivalent to a second-grade spirit beast. However, this kind of spirit beast was very weak in a one-on-one fight. Since they mainly lived in flocks, they would usually charge out in a flock. A flock of poisonous sparrows was quite powerful. Bu Fang's meteor knife skill had reached the second level of perfection. After such a long period of practice, it had long reached an extremely terrifying realm. After treating these poisonous sparrows as big carrots, dealing with them was simply too easy. Feathers fluttered in the air. Then, a flock of poisonous sparrows was beheaded at a speed visible to the naked eye. Every slash of the knife was like cutting a fruit. The poisonous sparrows were cut in half, and fresh blood splattered all over the ground. Bu Fang calmly stood where he was. His kitchen knife danced in the air as if he was dancing. At the very least, Tang Yin was completely dumbfounded. These poisonous sparrows were all killed by Bu Fang. It was so easy. The kitchen knife spun in his hand, and then Bu Fang held it horizontally in front of his chest. The kitchen knife was bright, and there was not a single drop of blood on it. Tang Yin was dumbfounded. The cook's army unit behind Bu Fang were also dumbfounded. Even the black-robed man's face was filled with disbelief. His poisonous sparrows were all killed. He was killed by this young man who popped out of nowhere? Why did he kill my poisonous sparrow? Damn it! My baby! A roar filled with resentment and heartache rang out. The black-robed man's eyes were filled with killing intent. Bu Fang looked at the pile of poisonous sparrows on the ground in disgust. The corpses of these poisonous sparrows were scattered all over the ground, emitting a thick stench. The blood of these poisonous sparrows was pitch black, and the stench was unparalleled. These poisonous sparrows were probably fed with an elixir that caused them to go berserk, right? Just like the demonic fish in the southern city. However, compared to the demonic fish, these poisonous sparrows were even more poisoned. As his long robe fluttered, Bu Fang withdrew his gaze from the corpses of the poisonous sparrows on the ground. He felt a strong gust of wind whistling toward him. It turned out that the black-robed man was actually dashing toward Bu Fang. He held the talisman magic array with one hand, and concentrated true energy was gathering in his palm. He planned to slap Bu Fang to death with a single slap. In his eyes, Bu Fang was merely a sixth-grade battle emperor. He did not care about him at all. As long as this slap landed, this young man would not even have the time to scream. He would turn into a puddle of pus on the ground. Ordinary people would not dare to look down on his poison. Bu Fang's expression was very calm. He was not the slightest bit worried about his own safety as he stared straight into the eyes of the black-robed man. The coldness in his eyes made the heart of the black-robed man turn cold. Then, his palm bombarded the target. However, the target was not Bu Fang, but an ice-cold figure. Xiao Bai's eyes shone with a deep purple radiance. It was like a stream of light in the dark night. It suddenly burst forth, and a wave of energy surged forth, sending the black-robed man flying. With a loud explosion, Xiao Bai's foot stomped on the ground. His figure was like a cannonball as he rapidly charged toward the black-robed man who was flying backward. What the hell is this thing? The black-robed man's pupils shrank, and his heart was greatly alarmed. Before this, He did not sense the existence of this iron lump puppet at all. How did it suddenly appear? Moreover, this sudden burst of pressure made him feel a sense of crisis. Boom, boom! He consecutively threw out 2 balls of true energy. Those balls of true energy were as black as ink, and with a frightening corrosive power, they smashed onto the body of Xiao Bai, who was charging straight at him. However, they did not leave a single wound on him. Bufang was very calm. Although it was only Xiao Bai's clone, it was enough to deal with an ordinary 8th-grade war god. The black-robed man before him was merely a 7th-grade war god. With Xiao Bai's help, it was enough. Although Bufang was very curious about the talisman array in the black-robed man's hand, Tang Yin, who was lying on the ground, finally relaxed his mind. He gasped for breath, and even spat out a mouthful of blood. His complexion became extremely unsightly. However, although his complexion was unsightly, he did not feel a sense of crisis from the black-robed man anymore. He actually heaved a sigh of relief. In the distant sky, waves of true energy rolled out, accompanied by frightening explosive shouts. That was a battle between 2 8th-grade war gods, and I Yen should be among them. However, that battle did not interest Bufang. His gaze fell on the distance. With Xiao Bai's ability, it should be very easy for him to deal with this black-robed man. Indeed, as Bufang had expected, that black-robed man was completely crushed by Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai did not even take out his machete. He merely threw out 3 punches, and that black-robed man was smashed to the ground, spitting out blood. The black-robed expert's eyes were filled with fear. Although he was not an expert in physical combat, he was still a 7th-grade battle saint. However, he was unexpectedly smashed to the ground by a puppet with 3 punches. This 7th-grade battle saint. Could it be fake? Although his main method of attack was the poisonous sparrow, he was still a freaking 7th-grade battle saint. You can't kill me. I am a member of the Shura sect. The black-robed expert, who was lying on the ground, had blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were wide open, and his face was filled with fear. Boom! Xiao Bai landed on the ground with a loud bang, causing the ground to tremble. His purple eyes flickered, causing people to feel a chill in their hearts. Bufang indifferently glanced at the black-robed expert on the ground, his face expressionless. Then, bang! Xiao Bai threw out another punch. The terrifying force caused the entire ground to crumble. That black-robed expert was smashed into the ground, and his breath was completely gone. Buzz, the jade talisman that he had been holding in his hand, suddenly sped up, wanting to escape again. However, this time, Bufang's eyes narrowed. His figure shot out, and he actually grabbed the talisman array. The supreme sword will on the talisman array had already been shattered when it was escaping the last time. This time, without the protection of the supreme sword will, it was directly grabbed by Bufang. These 5 jade talismans formed a strange formation. The formation looked like a round, transparent sphere, and from time to time, there would be gray faces struggling and roaring in it. What is this plaything? Bufang was a little puzzled. Suddenly, a roar came from the sky. The battle between the 8th-grade war gods seemed to have suddenly become intense. Congratulations to the host for completing the military mission. You will now return. The solemn and earnest voice of the system suddenly rang in Bufang's ears. Instantly, Bufang felt a strange fluctuation in his mind. Specks of white light began to hover above his head, and gradually converged to form a peculiar teleportation array. The teleportation has begun? Bufang's eyebrows twitched. He grabbed the talisman array in his hand, and glanced at the specks of white light above his head. Boo! Senior, what are you doing? Tang Yin's eyes widened as he looked at the specks of white light hovering around Bufang's body. The specks of white light were filled with pure energy, which made him extremely frightened. Roar! The entire Western Mystery City trembled with this roar, as if the earth was shaking and the mountains were shaking. Leave the soul congregation array for me. The array above Bufang's head gradually took shape, and a suction force was produced from within the array. Xiao Bai had already recovered his innocent appearance. He stood behind Bufang, and both of them were shrouded in the light screen of the teleportation array. In the distant sky, a figure stepped on the air and approached. It was a middle-aged man with a head full of gray hair. The man's eyes were fixed on Bufang, or more accurately, on the talisman array in Bufang's hand. He sensed the energy of the teleportation array surrounding Bufang, and immediately roared, "Stay here!" Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. It was as if the void was burning. In the man's hand, a black flame was burning, and it turned into a black arrow. He pulled the flaming bow fully, and then shot it toward Bufang. The flame burst forth, and even the void was distorted. Around Bufang, a strong wind blew, and the whistling wind completely enveloped him. Bufang grabbed the talisman array with one hand, and expressionlessly looked at the flaming arrow that was speeding toward him. The arrow gradually twisted and warped in his eyes. With a buzzing sound, Bufang disappeared along with the talisman array. Chapter 309. The specks of starlight dissipated like flowing water, disappearing without a trace. The gray-haired man's eyes were bloodshot. He suddenly opened his mouth and roared. His face became ferocious, and there was even a trace of fear in the depths of his pupils. The soul congregation array was taken away? If the high priestess knew about this, she felt that she would suffer a terrible punishment. The high priestess's dignity was inviolable. Who the hell is it? How dare they take away the soul congregation array? Damn it! Damn it! The gray-haired man was almost driven mad. How could there be such a powerful existence in the Western Mystery Army? He never expected it. However, when he came to his senses, it was too late. Azura's gate demon, die! A delicate shout reverberated in the air. Then, a beautiful figure appeared as if she was stepping on clouds. Her delicate body was covered with an exquisite true energy armor. Enai Yan's face was solemn and awe-inspiring. She held a long sword in her hand. The long sword was shining brightly, and the sword light was flickering. The gray-haired man's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He suddenly rose from the ground and fought with Enai Yan again. The imperial city of the Light Wind Empire. Fong Fong's little store. The room on the second floor was quiet as usual. A ray of sunlight, which had just leaped out of the flat surface, entered the room through the window, reflecting a dense luster. In the dim room, above the void, dots of light appeared. Those dots of light were like lively elves, rapidly moving around. Soon, they converged into a strange teleportation array. The teleportation array buzzed, and then a gale began to howl within the room. A slender figure stepped out of the teleportation array. His long hair fluttered in the howling wind. Bufang held the teleportation array formed by the 5 talismans in one hand and stepped out of the array. The radiance disappeared, and everything returned to silence. Bufang's fluttering hair also quietly fell down and draped over his shoulder. The sunlight outside the window became more and more intense, shining on Bufang's body. It was as if Bufang had draped a golden veil over him, hazy and dazzling. Phew! Bufang heaved a sigh of relief and felt his mind relax. The familiar smell in the room made him feel a little comfortable. Suddenly, Bufang narrowed his eyes and looked at the void behind him. The speck of light was about to dissipate, but it did not. The void began to distort, like a whirlpool that had been twisted. With a sizzling sound, a scorching heat suddenly appeared. An arrow burning with pitch-black flames shot out from the void, shooting towards Bufang with terrifying power and killing intent, as if it wanted to pierce through Bufang. This was the full power of an 8th-grade war god. Bufang had goosebumps all over his body, and he felt a terrifying sense of crisis. When the teleportation formation teleported away, it actually brought the arrow along with it. This was out of Bufang's expectation. Fong Fong's little store. Because it was still early, the store's doors were not open yet. Yu Fu was practicing her cutting and carving skills in the kitchen. At the entrance of the store, the big black dog, who was quietly lying on its stomach, suddenly twitched its ears and opened its eyes drowsily. A strange look flashed across the big black dog's eyes. In the next instant it raised its dog paw and licked it with its tongue. Then, it slapped the air. Green smoke curled around Bufang's hand. The arrow of an 8th grade war god made him feel a sense of crisis. Because he had returned to the store, Xiao Bai's clone disappeared, and could not block the arrow for him. Therefore, he could only rely on himself. However, just as he grasped the dragon bone kitchen knife, a vague dog paw appeared in the air. The corners of Bufang's mouth curled up, and his tense mind relaxed. He twirled the knife, and the dragon bone kitchen knife instantly turned into green smoke and dissipated. The vague dog paw patted down, and the surging and frightening flame arrow was smashed into sparks. It swayed and was unable to advance any further. Finally, with a loud explosion, it broke into pieces and disappeared. The flame arrow disappeared, and the vague dog paw also gradually dissipated. The air regained its tranquility. Bufang's face was calm. He exhaled once again and relaxed his body. Looking at the talisman magic array in his hand, Bufang casually threw it on the table. Then, he took off all the equipment on his body and walked into the bathroom. After taking a comfortable hot bath, Bufang walked out of the room with a head full of wet hair, put on comfortable clothes, and went to the kitchen. In the kitchen, the sound of Yu Fu practicing her knife skills rang out in an orderly manner. The sound was very steady. It was obvious that after half a month, Yu Fu's knife skills had become more stable. When Bufang walked into the kitchen, Yu Fu was still oblivious to his presence. She was concentrating on practicing her knife skills. The kitchen knife in her hand seemed to have a life of its own as it danced around agilely, unceasingly cutting up the ingredients. Suddenly, Yu Fu's kitchen knife stopped. As if she had sensed something, she raised her head and revealed her delicate and beautiful face. She saw Bufang with a head full of wet hair. Yu Fu's pupils slightly dilated, and her face revealed joy and surprise. "Owner Bu, you're back." Owner Bu was finally back. Half a month had passed. If he didn't return, Yu Fu would have thought that something had happened to Owner Bu. Not bad. Your knife skills have improved. Bufang nodded his head and praised. Continue practicing. I will make a dish of sweet and sour ribs for Blackie, Bufang said. Yu Fu obediently nodded her head and continued practicing her knife skills. Bufang walked to his stove. After not using his stove to cook for half a month, Bufang actually felt a long-lost feeling in his heart. Touching the ice-cold stove, the corners of Bufang's mouth curled up. Then, he casually picked up a kitchen knife from the knife rack and took out ingredients from the cupboard. With a twist of the kitchen knife, he quickly cut the ribs into pieces. After heating the wok evenly, Bufang started cooking the sweet and sour ribs that he hadn't cooked for a long time. In just a short while, a rich fragrance of meat wafted in the store. Yu Fu's knife skills had clearly slowed down considerably. Smelling the meaty aroma that pervaded the air, Yu Fu's eyes widened in disbelief. Nowadays, she was very sensitive to the aroma of dishes. She could feel that the aroma of Owner Bu's sweet and sour ribs was much stronger than before. Oh my God! Could it be that Owner Bu's culinary skills had improved again? It was terrifying. Owner Bu's culinary skills were already so amazing, yet he could still improve. It seemed like she couldn't be lazy anymore. Otherwise, the gap between her and Owner Bu would only widen. With a shake of the wok, the fragrant sweet and sour ribs was taken out. After pouring the enchanting sauce over it, a plate of sweet and sour ribs was completed. Glancing at Yu Fu, who was diligently practicing, Bufang's slender fingers grabbed the porcelain plate and carried the sweet and sour ribs out of the kitchen. After opening the door of the store, a monotonous alleyway appeared in front of him. Although it was monotonous, it gave Bufang a warm feeling. At the entrance, Blackie was lying lazily, snoring loudly. "Blackie, it's time to eat," Bufang gently said as he placed the plate of sweet and sour ribs in front of Blackie. As he said that, he stroked Blackie's smooth and untainted fur. Blackie's nose suddenly twitched. Then, it opened its eyes, which were incomparably bright. Sweet and sour ribs. Blackie stood up excitedly and gobbled down the ribs from the porcelain bowl. After biting a piece of sweet and sour ribs, Blackie's movements suddenly froze. It raised its doggy head and looked at Bufang suspiciously. There was a trace of doubt and bewilderment in its doggy eyes. This sweet and sour ribs. How did it become even more delicious? Although Blackie's heart was filled with doubt, it was happy that the sweet and sour ribs had become more delicious. It didn't care about anything else and gobbled down the porcelain plate even more ferociously. Bufang grinned. He stood up and stretched his body. After taking in a breath of fresh air, he turned around and returned to the store. He opened the door and started the day's business. His hair was already dry. After tying it up with a velvet rope, Bufang pulled a stool over and sat in front of the store. He squinted his eyes in contentment. As expected, staying in the store was still the most comfortable. After a while, Xiao Xiaolong came in excitedly. As soon as he entered, he saw Bufang curled up on the chair with his eyes squinted. "Owner Bu, you're finally willing to come back," Xiao Xiaolong said excitedly. Bufang opened his slightly squinted eyes and glanced at Xiao Xiaolong. "How's your knife technique practice? Tomorrow is the knife technique test. I wish you good luck." The excited expression on Xiao Xiaolong's face suddenly froze. Then, as if he was constipated, he rushed into the kitchen. Bufang raised his eyebrows and continued squinting his eyes. "Congratulations to the host for completing the temporary mission. Head to the Western Mystery City and join the army as a cook. During this period, complete 3 dishes that have been judged qualified by the system. The mission reward will be issued." Mission reward: 10% increase in true energy cultivation progress, a fragment of the God of Cooking set, successfully issued. Fragment of the God of Cooking set, 3/3, has been collected. Exchange for the second piece of the God of Cooking set. Chapter 310. Bufang's body, which was originally lazily curled up on the chair, suddenly shook. His squinted eyes instantly opened and became bright. His body seemed to have jumped up from the chair. He sat up straight and widened his eyes. The God of Cooking set could be exchanged? He almost forgot about this important matter. Once he returned to the store, the comfortable environment made him forget about the system's reward. His first piece of the God of Cooking set was the Golden Dragon Bone Kitchen Knife. To him, this was an epoch-making kitchen tool. In the past year or so, this Golden Dragon Bone Kitchen Knife had been of great help to him. It had even improved his culinary skills by a lot. Bufang liked this kitchen knife from the bottom of his heart. However, unknowingly, he had already gathered 3 fragments of the God of Cooking set and could exchange for the second one. What was it exactly? The curiosity in Bufang's heart was suddenly aroused. Exchanging for the God of Cooking set, 10% true energy cultivation progress will be released. The system's serious and solemn voice resounded, lingering in Bufang's ears. It made his breathing slightly chaotic. 10% true energy cultivation progress. This thing was also very important to Bufang. However, Bufang was clear that even with this 10% true energy cultivation progress, it would still not be easy to level up. He would probably need to obtain another 10% true energy cultivation progress reward. However, this kind of thing could not be rushed. It was better than nothing, right? Bufang was actually very optimistic. What he really cared about was the God of Cooking set. However, the system still did not give him any information about the God of Cooking set. This made Bufang scratch his ears and cheek. He was very depressed. He felt that the system was definitely doing this on purpose. It was definitely teasing him. In the alley, a series of orderly footsteps came. Then, Fatty Jean and his fat army appeared in front of Bu Fong. "Oh, Owner Bu? I haven't seen you for a long time. It seems like my luck is pretty good, to be able to taste Owner Bu's dishes so soon after returning to the Imperial City." When Fatty Jean saw Bu Fong bathed in the sunlight, his eyes, which were squeezed by his fat to the point where there was only a slit left, suddenly burst forth with the kind of brilliance that was not inferior to seeing a beautiful woman. Bu Fong was waiting for the appearance of the god of cooking set. He had been waiting for the system to speak again, but it did not, which made him feel annoyed. This kind of irritation was very undesirable for a chef. If a chef wanted to cook a delicious dish, he couldn't be impatient. He had to calm his heart and calm his mind. When Bu Fong saw Fatty Jin's familiar smiling face, he immediately realized that he was a little obsessed. "Oh, today all the dishes in Fong Fong's little store will be cooked by me. Welcome." Bu Fong stood up from his chair. Although he still looked calm, there was a hint of gentleness on his face. Fatty Jean and the army of fatties behind him were startled. They looked at each other and cheered. In Fong Fong's little store, in order to taste the dishes personally cooked by Owner Bu, it had to be a few special dishes. Usually, the egg-fried rice, sweet and sour ribs, and so on were all cooked by the two apprentice chefs of Fong Fong's little store. Although the taste was pretty good and was much better than most of the chefs in the Imperial City, or even the Light Wind Empire. However, everyone was well aware. Compared to Owner Bu's dishes, they lacked an indescribable charm and spirituality. This charm and spirituality led to the difference between the dishes. Looking at Bu Fong's slender figure turning around and walking back into the kitchen, Fatty Jean let out a long sigh. Then, he took the lead and ran toward the store. The others also came back to their senses and shouted at each other. No one gave way to the other and they began to squeeze. On this day, Bu Fong stayed in the kitchen to cook. His hands never stopped and the sound of chopping resounded in the kitchen. When Ouyang Xiaoi arrived at the store and picked up the first dish, she discovered that the person standing at the window was actually Owner Bu. Ouyang Xiaoi was stunned for a few seconds when she saw his expressionless face. Then, she let out a scream. Immediately after, she was met with Bu Fong's eye roll. The news spread like wildfire. After Fatty Jean and the others left the store, the business of the store suddenly became more and more lively. The customers in the Imperial City were all rushing toward Fong Fong's little store in an endless stream. Almost half of the influential people in the Imperial City were there. Even the newly appointed guardian of the Imperial City, Xiao Yu, had his hands behind his back as he eagerly rushed over to the Imperial City. What a joke! Nowadays, it was extremely difficult to eat a dish personally cooked by Owner Bu. Furthermore, the meaning behind it was even more extraordinary. Waves of rich fragrance wafted out from Fong Fong's little store. It was like a wriggling little snake that continuously twined in the air for a long time. It floated out of the store, out of the alleyway, and out of the 10-mile-long street. When Xiao Xiaolong and Yu Fu saw that the store was several times livelier than usual, they both sucked in a breath of cold air. At this moment, they finally understood how big the gap between them and Owner Bu was. The blissful smiles on the faces of the diners after they finished their dishes made them feel a burst of excitement. This was because it was something they could not achieve. They still had a long way to go. When the opening hours ended, the cooking in the kitchen finally stopped. However, Bu Fong still made a few dishes and brought them out of the kitchen. He placed them on the table in the store and called Xiao Xiaolong, Yu Fu, and Ouyang Xiaoi over. He planned to reward them. This was a grade 1 wok of fortunes. However, compared to the wok of fortunes used by the army, it was much inferior. This was because the ingredients used in the wok were not all 7th grade spirit beast's meat. However, using the spirit beast's meat from the system's dimensional storage was the same. Even though the grade of the meat was slightly inferior, it was still delicious. The hot and sour soup and mapo tofu were also cooked by him. Especially the mapo tofu, which was cooked using the kitchen's tools, the aroma was simply too fragrant. Ouyang Xiaoyi and the other two widened their eyes, and their gazes almost pierced through the horizon. 3 new dishes. Was Owner Bu injected with chicken blood? Normally, he would not even be able to cook a new dish for half a month. Try it. The taste is pretty good. The corners of Bu Fang's mouth curled up as he said to the 3 of them. Bu Fang raised his head and looked at the menu hanging in the store. There were a few more dishes on it, and they were the dishes from the Grade 1 Walk of Fortunes. The prices of the dishes were not cheap. As for the Grade 1 Walk of Fortunes, it was priced at 250 crystals. However, the Grade 1 Walk of Fortunes here was not the same as the one that Bu Fang had cooked in the Western Mystery Army. The grade of the spirit beast's meat was not that high. The last time he cooked it, it was a rare opportunity. Who knew that so many ingredients would crazily run out of the 100,000 mountains? In the end, what made Bu Fang happy was that everything he pointed at with his kitchen knife was an ingredient. Even now, he was excited when he thought about it. He had not seen Ouyang Xiaoyi for half a month, and she had actually grown taller. She had become even more slender and elegant. However, just like before, she did not have the slightest demeanor of a virtuous lady while eating. Huff, huff. Smelly boss. Your mapo tofu is delicious. It's so spicy and refreshing. Ouyang Xiaoyi was panting. Her lips were red and swollen from the spiciness, but her eyes could not tear away from the dazzling mapo tofu. She kept sticking out her tongue. Xiao Xiaolong's table manners were similar, while Yu Fu's was slightly better and more refined. Bu Fang pinched his fingers and curled up the corners of his mouth. He also joined the army of 3 foodies. In just a short while, the 3 dishes were swept clean. After eating, Ouyang Xiaoyi's face was flushed. She glared at Bu Fang and dashed out of the store toward her home without saying a word. These dishes contained rich spirit energy, especially the Grade 1 Walk of Fortunes, which was known for its gentle spirit energy. It was the best dish to help one achieve a breakthrough. Ouyang Xiaoyi's cultivation had stagnated at the 4th grade battle spirit realm for a long time. Every day, she absorbed the spirit energy from the 5 stripes path understanding tree and comprehended the truth of cultivation. Today, with the stimulation from the Grade 1 Walk of Fortunes, her cultivation overflowed and she broke through. Xiao Xiaolong and Yu Fu did not show any signs of breaking through, but it was still beneficial to their cultivation. The 2 of them bid farewell to Bu Fang. Bu Fang put away the bowls and chopsticks and closed the door. At the moment when the door was closed, the system's voice resounded in his mind. After a busy day, Bu Fang's goal was to calm his anxious heart. As expected, only when he was cooking would he be able to calm his heart. The god of cooking set Black Turtle Constellation Walk has been distributed. Host, please check, the system's voice resounded. However, Bu Fang was not impatient, which was rare. He first practiced the meteor cutting technique that had reached its pinnacle and was unable to achieve a breakthrough. Then, he returned to his room and closed the door. After washing his slender hands and wiping them clean, Bu Fang solemnly immersed his mind into the system. Then, a buzzing sound could be heard. Dense dots of light suddenly appeared in the room. A white teleportation array once again appeared in front of Bu Fang. A strong gust of wind blew, causing his hair to flutter. The velvet rope that tied him up was blown apart by the strong wind, causing his hair to become disheveled. Bu Fang attentively looked at the teleportation array. Amidst the rumbling of the array, a huge figure of light slowly floated out. This was a figure that was as black as the golden dragon bone kitchen knife. It looked like an ordinary wok. However, on the edge of the wok, there were numerous mysterious patterns and totems drawn. Bu Fang looked at it for a long time and finally realized that the pattern seemed to be a huge black tortoise that was carrying the weight of a mountain on its back. A wave of ancient and heavy feeling assaulted Bu Fang's face, causing his mind to tremble. His eyes abruptly widened. What a strange walk! Bang, the dots of light disappeared and the teleportation array dissipated. Then, the walk with the carving of the black tortoise fell onto the floor of his room. At this moment, the entire store seemed to tremble violently. The big black dog that was lying at the entrance also widened its eyes. It looked at Bufang's room with a strange gaze. This walk. It actually makes people's heart palpitate, Bufang muttered to himself. He stretched out his slender fingers and rubbed the edge of the walk. A bone-chilling feeling instantly traveled from the edge of the walk to his fingers and into his nerve endings. A strange fluctuation came from within. Bufang seemed to have sensed it. He felt a scorching pain from his right hand. A pattern that looked like a walk appeared on his wrist. Bufang clicked his tongue in wonder. With a thought, the heavy and simple walk became extremely light. He lifted it up single-handedly. With a wave of his hand, it was as easy as summoning the golden dragon bone kitchen knife. The walk also turned into black smoke and disappeared. The dragon bone kitchen knife in his left hand and the black turtle constellation walk in his right hand, the god of cooking set, was indeed superior. Chapter 3:11 Host, Bufang True Energy Cultivation Level 6th grade, has reached the state of true energy materialization. As a man who wants to become the god of cooking in the fantasy world, the host's future path will be even more arduous and difficult. Work hard, young man. Cooking talent, 2 stars skills. Level 2 meteor cutting technique, 100 out of 100. Level 2 Big Dipper carving technique, 60 out of 100 tools. Golden Dragon Bone Kitchen Knife, God of Cooking Set. Black Turtle Constellation Walk, God of Cooking Set. God of Cooking Overall Rating. Junior Chef, your cooking skills have finally begun to show their brilliance. Your talent has also begun to shine. Your cutting and carving techniques have also reached a higher level. The path to becoming the god of cooking has opened for you. System level 6 stars, conversion ratio is 90%. The host is allowed to capture ingredients and recruit apprentices. Bufang stood on the spot and raised both of his hands slightly. The system panel flashed in his mind as he carefully observed the information on it. His true energy cultivation level did not achieve a breakthrough because the crystals he earned from the sales were still lacking. However, Bufang did not care about this. What he cared about was the Black Turtle Constellation Walk. Currently, there was an additional Black Turtle Constellation Walk in the system panel. Black Turtle Constellation Walk, one of the accessories of the God of Cooking set. It is forged from the shell of an ancient spirit beast, the Black Turtle. It weighs more than 10,000 kilograms and is incomparably sturdy. It has a suppressive effect on all spirit beasts. When used together with the Golden Dragon Bone Kitchen Knife, it has the effect of killing spirit beasts below the 8th grade. With the host's current total amount of true energy, each activation will consume half of the host's true energy. The Black Turtle Constellation Walk has an effect on ingredient. It can increase the various effects of the ingredients, increase the taste, improve the texture, and reduce the cooking time. During the cooking process, it can absorb the spirit energy from the ingredients and feed it back into the dish, completing the perfect circulation of spirit energy. The system's serious and solemn voice rang out as it introduced the Black Turtle Constellation Walk in detail to Bufang, explaining all of its functions. As Bufang listened, his eyes became brighter and brighter. The effects of this walk were simply too terrifying. To a chef, it was simply a legendary divine tool. With this walk in hand, all the delicacies in the world would be available. Friendly reminder: if the host wishes to use the Black Turtle Constellation Walk to cook, he must use the Heaven and Earth Obsidian Flame to activate it. Otherwise, the host will not be able to activate the Black Turtle Constellation Walk. Bufang was excited, but the system's words were like a bucket of cold water poured on him. The excitement on his face suddenly disappeared, and he became expressionless. What the hell was a heaven and earth obsidian flame? System, what do you mean? Bufang asked. What is a heaven and earth obsidian flame? Did I? The heaven and earth obsidian flame is born from the heavens and earth. It has the effect of burning everything. It is the essence of the entire continent. Only this kind of flame can burn and activate the Black Turtle constellation walk. The system explained. Bufang was stunned for a few seconds. Then, he faintly said, does this mean that I don't have this heaven and earth obsidian flame yet, so I can't use this Black Turtle constellation walk to cook? The system did not answer Bufang. Its silence meant that it admitted it. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. With a thought, the pitch-black Black Turtle constellation walk immediately floated in front of him. A strange wave of energy was emitted from it. The system said that this Black Turtle constellation walk weighed more than 10,000 pounds, but Bufang did not feel it at all. Perhaps it was because he had already become the owner of this Black Turtle constellation walk. After all, when the Black Turtle constellation walk first appeared, that heavy and simple feeling did not seem fake. With a flick of his finger, he knocked on the wall of the Black Turtle constellation walk. A muffled sound echoed continuously. Bufang sighed. This walk was a good walk, but it was a pity that he could not use it. With a thought, green smoke curled around his right hand. Then, the Black Turtle constellation walk and the Golden Dragon Bone kitchen knife turned into green smoke and dissipated. Temporary mission. The Heaven and Earth Obsidian Flame 10,000 Bestial Flames Fire Seed is about to appear. Host, please subdue the 10,000 Bestial Flames Fire Seed. Mission reward. 10% of your true energy cultivation. Mission failure punishment. 10% of your true energy cultivation will be deducted. Just as Bufang sighed and shook his head in regret, the familiar voice of the system resounded in his mind once again. This time, another temporary mission was issued. What the hell? Didn't I just complete a temporary mission? Why can't I get some rest? Bufang's face stiffened. He had just completed the temporary mission of marching troops and had yet to have a good night's sleep. Yet another temporary mission was issued. Was the system having too much fun? The map of the 10,000 Bestial Flames Fire Seed will be issued 1 month later when the gourmet map opens. The system said in a serious tone. 10,000 Bestial Flames. Heaven and Earth Obsidian Flames. Bufang furrowed his brows. This temporary mission seemed to be a little difficult. If he failed, there would be a mission penalty. This had never happened before. However, Bufang also understood that as his cultivation level continued to rise, his current culinary skills also became more and more powerful. Every little bit of improvement was precious. The system wanted him to become the god of cooking who stood at the top of the food chain in the fantasy world, so it naturally had to be strict with him. It would be more difficult to improve in the future. Every failure could be a fatal hindrance to the improvement of his cooking skills. The system wanted to raise his vigilance and prevent him from being too relaxed. Bufang indeed felt that he had been too relaxed recently. During the military mission, it took him half a month to come up with a dish that could satisfy the system. It seemed like it was all because everything had been too smooth. Bufang rubbed his chin and reflected on himself. After that, he lay on his bed and started to sleep. No matter what, as a chef, it was important to have a good sleep. In the vast border city, another furious roar came from the pitch-black iron tower that stood in the middle of the border city. A terrifying pressure suddenly spread out from the tower and permeated the surroundings. The 3 blood guards abruptly opened their eyes. Their minds were somewhat shaken. Creak, the sound of a heavy metal door being pushed open resounded. Then, under the shrill gazes of the 3 blood guards, the tightly shut door of the metal tower actually began to slowly open. A figure slowly walked out from the gate. A blood-red light burst out from the iron tower and enveloped the figure that was slowly walking out. The figure was not stooped. Instead, it was slightly tall. As the figure gradually became clearer, it finally appeared in front of the three blood guards. It was a woman with a graceful and enchanting figure. Her upper body was only wearing a thin red undergarment. Her face was covered by a cold black mask, which covered her face that made people curious. 5 skulls were strung together to form a necklace and hung on her fair and slender swan-like neck. Her lower body was covered by an extremely short leather skirt. It was unknown what kind of spirit beast the skirt was made of. 2 straight and slender legs could be seen, causing one's imagination to run wild. Judging from her figure, she was definitely a beauty. She was so beautiful that no one dared to look at her directly. It was a pity that she was wearing a mask and no one could see her face clearly. As the woman walked out from the Iron Tower, the hearts of the 3 blood guards trembled. High Priestess! The 3 blood guards dashed out and gathered in front of the woman. The woman gently raised her arm. Her slender and fair fingers gently rubbed together, emitting a strange aura. I can sense that one of the 9 soul congregation arrays is missing. Do any of you know what happened? The woman's voice carried a trace of coldness and gentleness. However, when the 3 blood guards heard it, their bodies trembled and their eyes were filled with fear. I don't know. We have been guarding the Holy Tower all this time. We don't know anything about the Soul Congregation Array. The Soul Congregation Array is related to the revival of our Shura sect. We can't afford any mishaps. I can sense the disappearance of the Soul Congregation Array in the northwest. It should be near the Western Mystery City. One of you should go there. The woman raised her fair finger and gently tapped on the forehead of one of the blood guards. The blood guard's body trembled and cold sweat dripped down. Yes, I will go now, the blood guard said in a trembling voice. The high priestess raised her masked face. The 3 blood guards felt a cold gaze sweep over them. In another month, the Lord will begin his breakthrough. If you can't find the Soul Congregation Array that has disappeared, you should know the consequences. If the Soul Congregation Array is not filled to the brim with soul essences, you can slaughter a city. Remember, don't ruin the Shura sect's plans. Rumble! As soon as she finished speaking, the woman's figure disappeared. Then, a creaking sound rang out. The heavy door closed with a loud bang. The 3 blood guards raised their heads. They realized that they were drenched in cold sweat. The 3 Supreme Being warriors were so scared that their sleeves were drenched in cold sweat. The 9 great soul congregation arrays are the key to awakening the departed soul orb. We can't afford to lose them. Since the High Priestess places such importance on it, the 2 of us should go. The Soul Congregation Array had the High Priestess sword energy on it, but it was destroyed. This is enough to prove that the person who took the Soul Congregation Array is extremely powerful. I'm afraid I can't handle it alone. The 2 blood guards looked at each other and nodded to each other. Then, they floated into the air and stepped on air. With a whistling sound, they sped out of Border City. The remaining person's gaze was solemn as he continued to guard the city's Iron Tower. Outside Border City, 2 blood guards wearing blood-colored robes looked at each other. One of them reached out his palm and a giant jade talisman appeared. The jade talisman had 9 glowing dots on it. The Soul Congregation Array that the High Priestess mentioned has appeared again. It's in the Imperial City of the Light Wind Empire? Why would it be in the Imperial City? One of the blood guards was puzzled. Who cares? No matter who it is, whoever dares to ruin our Shura sect's plan to revive will be killed without mercy. The other blood guard put away the jade talisman with a murderous look on his face. Then, the 2 of them changed their direction and dashed toward the Imperial City of the Light Wind Empire. Chapter 312. The Imperial City of the Light Wind Empire, Main Hall. Ji Qingshu wore a brocade robe as he sat on the dragon throne. His complexion was much better than before. Even though the Imperial City was still in a state of chaos and his position could be threatened at any time, he was no longer as worried as before. It was because the Light Wind Empire had received extremely powerful reinforcements. These reinforcements were existences that Ji Qingxue would never have dared to imagine. The godly temple of the Wildlands, the White Cloud Villa of the illusory Spirit Swamp, and the Clear Sky Pagoda of the 100,000 Mountains had all sent experts to support the Light Wind Empire. This was an unexpected surprise. The Light Wind Empire was already in a precarious situation. Many counties were occupied by Ji Qingyu's army because of the powerful existences within his army. Facing such existences, the experts of the Light Wind Empire couldn't even defend themselves. Even Xiao Meng suffered a great loss when he first encountered Ji Qingyu's army. Later, Ji Qingxue found out that Ji Qingyu was colluding with a forbidden force. That force was so evil that even the godly temple of the Wildlands and other terrifying forces wanted to eradicate it. Within the main hall, there were many experts from these forces. This was also the reason why Ji Qingxue's complexion was much better. Each of the forces had one expert guarding the imperial city. The weakest among them was a 7th-grade battle saint, while the rest were 8th-grade war gods. With so many experts present, the imperial city was basically as stable as Mount Tai in Ji Qingxue's eyes. "Your Majesty, have you made up your mind?" A man with bulging muscles that resembled a horned dragon gazed at Ji Qingxue, who was sitting on the dragon throne. This was an expert from the godly temple of the Wildlands, a powerful 8th-grade war god. His face showed no signs of fear toward Ji Qingxue. For a force like the godly temple of the Wildlands, worldly forces were no longer enough to intimidate them. "Elder son, it's not that I don't agree to your request. It's just that Fang Fang's little store cannot be touched." Ji Qingxue's face revealed a helpless expression. "Your Majesty, the death of our ferocious temple's elder Xia Yu is related to that store. Someone witnessed our ferocious temple's elder Xia fighting with the experts from that store." Elder Sun's expression was cold and stern. He was an elder of the godly temple of the Wildlands. Since 2 experts from the godly temple of the Wildlands had died in this store in the imperial capital, he naturally couldn't sit idly by. The godly temple of the Wildlands had sent him to the imperial city to protect the Emperor of the Light Wind Empire and to investigate this matter. The godly temple of the Wildlands could not be humiliated. Since this store dared to kill an 8th-grade war god and a supreme being with a fleshly body, it naturally had to bear the wrath of the godly temple of the Wildlands. Ji Qingxue was also aware of this, which was why he was in a dilemma. In his opinion, Owner Bu's store was simply a ticking time bomb. Anyone who provoked it would be done for. He really didn't want to provoke this expert from the godly temple of the Wildlands. "Your Majesty, I don't care what you think. It just so happens that the owner of that store has returned. I will go and demand an explanation from him today. Even if that store is guarded by a supreme beast, it is not a reason for him to humiliate our godly temple of the Wildlands," Elder Sun coldly said. After he finished speaking, he turned around and left the main hall. Ji Qingxue, who was sitting in the main hall, felt slightly embarrassed and angry. There were many experts from other factions in the main hall, such as Zhang Kong from the White Cloud Villa and a 7th-grade battle saint from the 100,000 Mountains. Ji Qingxue felt a burst of anger, but there was nothing he could do. In the face of such experts, he had no way of restraining them. Early morning, Bufang got out of bed. After washing up, he went to the kitchen. Yu Fu had already woken up and was practicing her cutting skills. When she saw Bufang, she smiled and greeted him. Bufang nodded and walked to his stove. He took the heavy kitchen knife and started practicing his cutting skills. Even though his meteor cutting skill had already reached the maximum level, he still practiced it out of habit. After practicing his cutting skills, he would naturally start carving. His Big Dipper carving skill was still a bit away from reaching the maximum level, so he mainly focused on carving. After practicing for a while, Bufang started preparing to cook the sweet and sour ribs. After going through the military mission, he had improved by a lot. He knew that he still had many shortcomings, so he became even more diligent. After a while, the rich aroma of the sweet and sour ribs permeated the kitchen. The orange juice poured onto the ribs and slowly flowed down. It emitted an intoxicating fragrance that whetted one's appetite. After opening the door of the store, Bufang placed the sweet and sour ribs in front of Blackie. The past 2 days were probably the happiest for Blackie. Bufang had been on the military mission for half a month, and its mouth was about to turn into a bird. The days without the sweet and sour ribs were simply too unbearable. After stroking Blackie's fur, Bufang returned to the store. After curling up on the chair for a while, Xiao Xiaolong ran over. Today was the day Bufang would test Xiao Xiaolong and Yu Fu's cutting and carving skills. When he arrived at the kitchen, the two of them were already prepared. Xiao Xiaolong was suppressing his anger. He had lost to Yu Fu last time, so this time, he must get back at her. Today's test is very simple. Use your cutting and carving skills to show me the 1,000-layer tofu flower. Bufang clasped his hands behind his back as he looked at the two of them and said calmly, 1,000-layer tofu flower? Xiao Xiaolong and Yu Fu were startled. This was a dish created by Bufang's famous cutting skill. Of course, it was not only about cutting skills but also about carving skills. They did not expect that the test this time would be this. Xiao Xiaolong and Yu Fu looked at each other and saw the will to fight in each other's eyes. Then, Bufang prepared the piping hot tofu for them to compete with each other. During this half a month, Xiao Xiaolong did not slack off. It could be seen from his cutting skill that was not inferior to Yu Fu's. However, Yu Fu was not bad either. This serpent woman always had a tenacious and indomitable will. She had an indescribable determination toward cooking. Her cutting skill was also very strong. The two of them calmed their hearts and focused their attention on making the 1,000-layer tofu flower. This was a competition that tested their cutting skills and stamina. After a short while, the two of them finished their respective dishes. It was very beautiful. Although the 2,000-layer tofu flowers had flaws, one could not help but admit that they were really beautiful. The fluff-like shredded tofu swayed in the crystal cup. It was so beautiful that it could move one's heart. The final result made Xiao Xiaolong despair. The winner was still Yu Fu. Yu Fu's cutting skill was more exquisite than Xiao Xiaolong's. As a punishment for his failure, Xiao Xiaolong once again received the heavy kitchen knife from Bufang and began to practice his cooking skills. Yu Fu looked at Xiao Xiaolong's unwilling face and happily covered her mouth. All right, the competition is over. You can practice your cooking skills, Bufang said calmly. After he finished speaking, he turned around and was about to leave the kitchen. However, he was stopped by Yu Fu's charming voice. Owner Bu. I might have something to do. Yu Fu wanted to say something but hesitated. Bufang was puzzled. A few days ago I received a letter from my father. He wants me to return to the Serpent Men tribe. It's an important matter. Yu Fu was a little hesitant. Bufang suddenly understood. It turned out that Yu Fu wanted to apply for a leave of absence. This was naturally allowed. Bufang was not an evil chef. If he wanted to imprison serpent women apprentices, he would naturally allow it. Go early and come back early. Don't forget to practice your cooking skills in the Serpent Men tribe. When you come back, you will still have to compete with Xiaolong, Bufang said seriously. Yu Fu's nervousness immediately dissipated. She heaved a sigh of relief and happily nodded her head. However, under Yu Fu's happy expression, there was a hint of worry. This was because her father knew that she was learning culinary skills from Owner Bu. However, he still wanted to call her back. It was obvious that there was an important matter. What was it that made her father so anxious to call her back? Bufang turned around and left the kitchen. Outside the restaurant, customers were still streaming in. The restaurant had begun its business for the day. Today, the little girl Ouyang was unexpectedly absent. She must have gone to break through after eating the premium wok of fortunes. However, it was not a big deal. Bufang was curled up in his chair. He seemed to be quite relaxed. Occasionally, he would go to the kitchen to cook a few dishes that were more difficult. However, some of the dishes that were quite expensive were rarely ordered. Bufang was happy to be free. As he curled up in his chair, he was pondering over the dishes in the menu. He was thinking about how to improve them and how to cook them to make the taste better. Customers entered and left the restaurant one after another. The atmosphere of the restaurant was very lively. Suddenly, a large group of people rushed into the restaurant. Bufang, who was curled up in his chair, suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze fell on the group of people, and he was slightly surprised. This was because this group of people was actually a group of armored guards. The guards were naturally very respectful toward Bufang. After all, the restaurant was famous in the imperial city. However, the man at the front, whose body was covered with horned dragon-like muscles, had a cold expression on his face. He was staring at Bufang. Bufang raised his eyebrows and looked back at him without fear. One of them was standing straight, while the other was curled up in his chair. Their gazes collided in the air. After staring at each other for a long time, Bufang rolled his eyes. He was too lazy to pay attention to him. The man finally opened his mouth. The moment he spoke, his tone was somewhat unfriendly. "Are you the owner of the restaurant who killed 2 of our godly temple's elders? Don't you need to give us an explanation for killing our godly temple's experts?" Chapter 313. Don't tell me you don't need to give an explanation to the godly temple of the Wildlands? Bufang was curled up in his chair. He had just rolled his eyes when he heard Elder Sun's arrogant words. He was taken aback. "Why do I need to give an explanation to the godly temple of the Wildlands?" Bufang said as he lazily curled up in his chair. He calmly glanced at Elder Sunday. Elder Sun's eyes narrowed, and the armored guards beside him felt their hearts skip a beat. "Owner Bu. This is Elder Sun of the godly temple of the Wildlands. He is an 8th grade war god," the guard introduced. 8th grade war god? Was he really that amazing? There were plenty of 8th grade war gods who died in this alleyway. Bufang didn't fear 8th grade war gods at all. The guards were well aware of the store's background. Previously, they had informed Elder Sun of what had happened in the store. However, Elder Sun had the backing of the godly temple of the Wildlands, so he wasn't afraid of the guards, even if Fong Fong's little store had a supreme beast guarding it. "I came here today under the orders of the temple master. You killed 2 experts of the godly temple of the Wildlands, so we can't just let this slide," Elder Sun said resolutely. Bufang just looked at him, quietly looking at him. Elder Sun's heart tightened. He swept his gaze over the store. This was an extremely dangerous store. Xiada and Xia Yu died here, so he naturally didn't have the ability to go against this store. He didn't, but the godly temple of the Wildlands did. The godly temple of the Wildlands was guarded by a true supreme beast. Moreover, the godly temple of the Wildlands had killed supreme beasts before. Therefore, he wasn't afraid of a supreme beast. "Are you done? If you are, then scram." Bufang stood up from his chair and stretched his body. Then, he slowly walked toward the kitchen and spoke indifferently. "Young man, don't think that you can be fearless just by relying on a supreme beast. This world is huge, and supreme beasts aren't invincible." Elder Sun took a deep breath and said. Elder Sun knew the rules of this store. As long as he didn't cause any trouble inside, there shouldn't be any problems. This time, he only came to give Bufang a warning and didn't intend to make a move. He wasn't a fool. There was a supreme beast in the store, and even Xia Yu died here. Compared to Xia Yu, there was still a huge gap. "If you obediently come with me to the godly shrine of the Wildlands and admit your mistake, the temple master will naturally let bygones be bygones." Otherwise, get lost. Bufang was a little annoyed and couldn't be bothered to talk too much with this person. He wondered if the experts of the godly temple of the wildlands had become stupid from cultivating too much. Back then, Xia Yu was the same. He flew above his store and shouted arrogantly. Now, Elder Sun wanted him to go to the godly temple of the wildlands and admit his guilt. Don't provoke me. Will Little Black kill you? Pleading guilty. What a joke. As soon as Bufang finished speaking, Elder Sun's eyes widened and he wanted to retort. However, they discovered that a huge figure had shot out from the kitchen and blocked in front of them. The eerie red brilliance caused goosebumps to rise all over their bodies. Ah! It's the crazy clothes stripping demon of Fong Fong's little store. Owner Bu is angry. Elder Sun, hurry up and leave. The armored guard shivered as he looked at Xiao Bai's plump figure. He was slightly frightened. He grabbed Elder Sun's sleeves and hurriedly dragged him out of the store. You! Elder Sun was dragged out of the store by the guards before he could even react. When the guards told Elder Sun about Xiao Bai's legendary deeds, Elder Sun's heart trembled and his whole body trembled. He felt a cold wind whistling past him. Crazy clothes stripping demon. It was said that Xiado was beheaded by this crazy clothes stripping demon. This was a terrifying puppet. Elder Sun stood at the entrance of the alleyway with a gloomy expression. In the end, he let out a sigh. Since that's the case, let's wait for the temple master to come and punish us. Even though the Shura sex demons are wreaking havoc in the world, the godly temple of the wildlands is still not a place that anyone can humiliate. This incident was only an interlude and it did not affect the store's business. The next day, Yu Fu bade farewell to Bufang and followed the merchant caravan on her way back to the illusory spirit swamp. Ouyang Xiaoyi had also completed her breakthrough. With the help of the premium walk of fortunes, she became a 5th grade battle king. This made her extremely excited because her current cultivation level had already caught up to her 3 foolish brothers. This was enough for her to show off in front of her 3 foolish brothers for a long time. Fong Fong's little store was open for business as usual. Every day there would be a large number of people coming and going. Business was booming. Of course, the popularity of the store paled in comparison to the Immortal Phoenix restaurant outside the alleyway. However, Fong Fong's little store focused on quality goods. Naturally, the Immortal Phoenix restaurant could not compare to it. Unknowingly, time slowly passed by in this leisurely manner. On this day, a piece of explosive news spread throughout the entire Imperial City. The citizens of the Imperial City were dumbfounded for a moment and then exploded into a commotion. Everyone was in a state of panic. The army led by Great General Xiao Meng suffered a crushing defeat. Great General Xiao Meng was severely wounded by the enemy and has returned to the Imperial City. This news seemed to have grown wings and rapidly spread throughout the Imperial City. While Fong Fong's little store was open for business, many customers were discussing this matter. The defeat of Xiao Meng's army was equivalent to the defeat of the Empire's army. Ji Qingyu's army could march straight into the Imperial City and face the Imperial City. For the citizens of the Imperial City, this was simply unimaginable. It had been a long time since they felt this kind of crisis. All along, they had only heard of Great General Xiao Meng's victory reports. However, the sudden news of Xiao Meng's death left everyone dumbfounded. Initially, Bufang was not very interested in these matters. However, when he was curled up in his chair and basking in the sun, the customers were talking about this topic. Under the influence of what he saw and heard, he began to understand a lot more. Did Xiao Meng lose? Bufang muttered to himself. Actually, he was not that surprised. If it wasn't for the fact that the Western Mystery Third Army just happened to eat the 9 first-grade wok he cooked and pushed their condition to the limit, the Western Mystery City would have already been breached. That mysterious force possessed extraordinary means. It was actually quite normal for Xiao Meng's army to be defeated. These days, Xiao Yanyu and Xiao Yu visited the store less often. Every time Xiao Xiaolong came to practice cooking, his complexion would always be unsightly. Xiao Yu would always come to the store, drink the Ice Heart Jade Urn wine, pay the bill, and leave in a hurry. Judging from the expressions of the Xiao family members, Xiao Meng was truly severely wounded. Xiao Meng's army retreated back to the imperial city and tightly guarded it. Outside the imperial city, smoke and dust billowed. The vast and mighty army swarmed over, filling up the official road outside the imperial city. A sense of urgency suddenly enveloped the entire imperial city. Ji Qingyu wore a full suit of armor and rode a spirit beast horse. His heroic spirit exuded from him as he proudly gazed at the majestic imperial capital in the distance. His eyes carried a trace of nostalgia and a trace of determination. He said that one day, he would come back to take back what was rightfully his. Now he was back. Behind him, there were many experts wrapped in black robes. Zhao Mushing, clad in a long robe, respectfully followed beside an elder in a black robe. This elder had an unfathomable aura, and his hands were clasped behind his back. Main Hall. Ji Qingxue sat solemnly on the dragon throne. He did not panic, not even when Ji Qingyu's army was pressuring him. He was the emperor of the Light Wind Empire. He had to remain calm. Anyone could panic, but not him. Below the main hall were the civil and military officials, as well as experts from the godly temple of the Wildlands and the White Cloud Villa. Many of these experts had unsightly expressions. It was because Xiao Meng was not the only one who was severely injured. The experts who went to help Xiao Meng were also gravely injured, and some even died. This was also a huge nightmare for them. This meant that the level of the Shura sect experts had exceeded their expectations. Your Majesty, do not worry. The Temple Master of the Godly Temple of the Wildlands is already on his way. The Temple Master is a true supreme being. These Shura sect demons will not be able to escape. Elder Sun said to Ji Qingxue, who was sitting on the dragon throne. Zhang Kong shot a glance at Elder Sun, then looked at Ji Qingxue and said, "The White Cloud Villa has already sent their commander. Your Majesty, do not worry." The commander of the White Cloud Villa was the strongest expert under the Villa Master. He was also a supreme being expert. They had underestimated the strength of the Shura sect warriors. They did not expect that so many 8th grade war gods, and even half a supreme being, would be severely injured. When the news spread back to the various factions, it caused a huge commotion. Every faction sent out their top experts. They could not allow the Shura sect to recover. The fear of being dominated by them still lingered in the hearts of the powerful factions in the southern region. Chapter 314. Illusory Spirit Swamp. In the muddy swamp, an astonishing battle had erupted. Two powerful 7th-rank spirit beasts were fighting each other. A frightening force spread out in all directions, causing the muddy swamp to churn unceasingly, causing the muddy swamp to splash everywhere. These two 7th-grade spirit beasts were fighting for territory. Such a scene was common in the Illusory Spirit Swamp. The Illusory Spirit Swamp was similar to the Wildlands. The deeper one went, the more powerful spirit beasts there were. In this area, these two 7th-grade spirit beasts were not considered powerful because there were many more spirit beasts that were stronger than them. Suddenly, a sonic boom resounded. The air was suddenly compressed and the swamp seemed to have exploded, causing mud to splatter everywhere. The two 7th-grade spirit beasts that were fighting suddenly froze and stopped their battle in a daze. They stared at the figure that appeared above their heads after the sonic boom disappeared. It was a tall and sturdy figure clad in armor. True energy coiled around his body like a dragon. The man had a face as sharp as a knife. He had a buzz cut and thick eyebrows. He glanced at the two 7th-grade spirit beasts and slightly furrowed his brows. A terrifying pressure was emitted from his body. The two 7th-grade spirit beasts were so frightened that they crawled on the ground and hid deep into the swamp. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. As spirit beasts, they could sense the danger emitted from this human. A sonic boom resounded once again. Then, the man tore through the air and dashed into the distance once again. The wildlands. The towering tree that pierced through the clouds was suddenly snapped in half at the waist. A huge bird-like spirit beast with wings as sharp as knives flew out. It was like a sword flashing by, cutting down all the trees in its path. On the back of this frightening bird-type spirit beast stood a fiendish, bald young man. The young man's skin was bronze in color, and his entire body seemed to be made of molten copper. It was a very peculiar sight, and the muscles on his body were like the roots of an ancient tree that were entwined inch by inch, filled with an explosive sense of power. The bald young man stood on the back of the spirit beast. His eyes were like lightning as he stared into the distance of the wildlands. Our ferocious temple has lost 2 strong warriors this time. Xia Yu had a high chance of becoming a supreme being, but in the end, he died. We must take revenge for this. As for the Shura sect demon, we must crush him to death. Otherwise, this group of demons will jump up again and stir up panic in the southern border. The bald man's eyes flickered and he snorted. He exerted force with his feet, causing the spirit bird to let out a shrill cry. It flapped its wings and sped up. A man and a bird transformed into a streak of light, instantly disappearing from the wildlands. The immeasurable mountain towered into the clouds, and the 100,000 mountains stretched as far as the eye could see. They had misjudged the strength of the Shura's Gates group of experts, so they hurriedly sent experts to remedy the situation. A few 100 miles away from the imperial capital, Ji Qingyu's army was stationed here. He wasn't in a hurry to attack the imperial city of the Light Wind Empire because he knew that this kind of thing couldn't be rushed. After all, this was the capital city of an empire, where the strongest experts of the empire were gathered. Although he had the Shura sect behind him, he still had to be cautious. He had no choice but to be cautious because if he failed, he would be facing eternal damnation. Zhao Mushing, who was wearing a long robe, slowly walked in front of Ji Qingyu. He chuckled. "Qingyu, you must be very excited about taking back what belongs to you." "What's there to be excited about? Enough people have died in this war," Ji Qingyu said after taking a deep breath. Zhao Mushing faintly smiled and stood beside Qingyu. He gazed at the majestic imperial city several 100 miles away, and the expression in his eyes gradually became fierce. "After conquering the imperial city, I don't have any other requests. I just want you to leave that Bufang to me." "Bufang? His store has a supreme beast guarding it. It's just a supreme beast. We also have a supreme beast here. There's no need to be afraid. I have a feeling that Fong Fong's little store is hiding a huge secret. Even if it's not for that secret, obtaining that path understanding tree is not a bad thing." Zhao Mushing rubbed his fingers as a trace of killing intent appeared in his eyes. All of a sudden, he raised his head and looked behind him. He saw 2 beams of blood-colored light traversing across the sky and instantly hovering above their heads. Among the troops, an old man suddenly opened his eyes. With a step, the old man appeared in the sky and hovered in front of the 2 beams of blood-colored light. "Blood guards? Aren't you guys guarding the sacred tower at Border City? Why are you here? Did something happen to the sacred tower?" The old man frowned and solemnly said, "Greetings, Venerable One." The 2 blood guards cupped their hands at the old man and then told him what the high priestess had told them. A soul congregation array was stolen by someone, and it ended up appearing in the imperial capital. The Venerable One's eyes suddenly narrowed and a trace of coldness appeared in his eyes. Could it have been stolen by the experts of the Celestial Arcanum sect? Impossible. The experts of the Celestial Arcanum sect did not appear in the imperial city. It shouldn't be them. Could it be the experts of the 100,000 mountains? The Venerable One had some doubts in his heart, because he had always sent people to keep an eye on the experts entering and leaving the imperial city. No matter how he thought about it, he could not figure out who could have stolen the Soul Congregation array. The three of them landed on the ground. King Yu and Zhao Mushing immediately walked over. The Blood Guards naturally did not fear the nobles of the secular world. They only slightly nodded their heads to show that they had met before. When Zhao Mushing heard the conversation between the three, his eyes lit up. Venerable One, I might know who is most likely in possession of the Soul Congregation array. Who? The eyes of the two Blood Guards immediately lit up and they shouted at the same time. A terrifying aura burst forth from their bodies, bringing with it a huge pressure. This pressure caused Zhao Mushing and King Yu to suck in a breath of cold air. There's a small store in the imperial city called Fong Fong's Little Store. The store is guarded by a supreme beast. Since there are no supreme experts in the imperial city at the moment, the store is the most likely to snatch away the Soul Congregation array, Zhao Mushing hurriedly said, his eyes flickering. The Venerable One gave him a deep look and coldly smiled. He naturally saw through Zhao Mushing's intentions. However, according to what Zhao Mushing said, if that store had a supreme beast, then he had to pay it a visit, regardless of whether he had the Soul Congregation array or not. Their ultimate goal was to invade the imperial city, and a force with a supreme beast overseeing it naturally could not be ignored. Then what are we waiting for? Let's quickly invade the imperial city. The high priest is already very angry, the Blood Guard anxiously said. Suddenly, the complexion of one of the Blood Guards changed. With a pinch of his hand, a jade plate appeared. The jade plate was surrounded by many specks of light. Among them, there was a very bright speck of light. The Soul Congregation array has appeared again, the Blood Guard said. In an alleyway of the imperial city, Fong Fong's Little Store. Bufong was curled up on a chair with his eyes slightly narrowed. A slight breeze blew past, bringing with it a slight chill. The store's business was not doing well. Once the news of Xiao Meng's severe injuries spread, the entire imperial city was in a state of panic. Many people hid in their homes and did not choose to come out for a meal. The bored Bufong moved his mind, and the 5 jade talismans he brought back from the Western Mystery City appeared in his hand. These 5 jade talismans were a little shabby, and there were many fine cracks on them, as if they could break at any time. The jade talismans rotated and formed a magic array. Within the array, there were white mist-like spirit essences circulating. From time to time, these spirit essences would transform into vague human faces, emitting bone-chilling roars. This magic array is really evil. Bufong furrowed his brows. After observing it for a while, he felt bored and put away the jade talisman magic array. In the distance, a figure was slowly approaching. Bufong was slightly startled. Xiao Meng. The figure that appeared in front of Bufong was the Xiao Meng, who was currently the talk of the imperial city. The severely injured Xiao Meng. Xiao Meng's complexion was not very good. It was so pale that it looked a little green. Bufong stood up, and Xiao Meng also stepped into the store. Ouyang Xiaoyi was also a little stunned when she saw Xiao Meng. However, Xiao Meng's frail appearance made her a little worried. "Owner Bu, give me a jar of Ice Heart Jade Urn wine." Xiao Meng's voice was a little hoarse. Just as he finished speaking, he couldn't help but cough. After coughing for a while, he actually coughed out black blood. "You've been poisoned." Bufong looked at him calmly. The black blood was a little familiar to him. It seemed to be similar to the poison in the southern city's second master Xiao, but the toxicity was more intense. The demonic fish meat was still in his system's dimensional storage, and he didn't know if it would work. Owner Bu must be joking. Now that the army is approaching and I, Xiao Meng, am seriously injured, I really don't have the face to face the people of the imperial city. Tomorrow, His Majesty will have the final negotiation with Ji Qingyu. If the negotiation fails, it will be the start of the war. When that time comes, I don't have the confidence to survive." Xiao Meng smiled bitterly. "That's why I came to Honorbu's place today, to drink one last jar of Iceheart Jade Urn wine." Tap tap tap. Just as Xiao Meng finished speaking, a beautiful figure rushed in from outside the door. It was the graceful figure of Xiao Yanyu. At this moment, Xiao Yanyu was not wearing a veil, and her exquisite and beautiful face looked a little haggard. "Father." Xiao Yanyu's voice was a little choked up. Bufang didn't say anything. He just turned around and went into the kitchen. After a while, he came back with a jar of Iceheart Jade Urn wine and placed it in front of Xiao Meng. Xiao Meng looked at the Iceheart Jade Urn wine and laughed. He raised the jar and drank it in big mouthfuls. Xiao Meng was too deeply poisoned. Even though this poison was similar to the one second Master Xiao suffered from, there were still some differences. Xiao Yanyu knew that Bufang had cured second Master Xiao of his poison. She had also thought of looking for Bufang, but she was very clear that Bufang relied on the demonic fish's meat essence to cure second Master Xiao of his poison. Although the meat essence could cure second Master Xiao of his poison, it might not be able to cure Xiao Meng's. Bufang also sighed. He clinked his cup with Xiao Meng's and drank it in one gulp. Just as the two of them were happily drinking, a roar suddenly resounded outside the imperial city. The angry roar of tens of thousands of soldiers resounded through the sky and traveled into the imperial city. Xiao Meng suddenly put down the jar of Iceheart Jade Urn wine. His mind was greatly shaken, and he suddenly stood up. Didn't they say that they would negotiate tomorrow? Why did Ji Qingyu's army directly attack the city? Chapter 3:15. When Xiao Meng heard the roar and the sound of the horn, he abruptly stood up from his seat with a grave expression on his face. However, in the next moment, he felt a tightness in his chest and started coughing violently. He coughed out another mouthful of black blood, and his complexion worsened. It seemed like the poison in him was extremely potent. Even a 7th-grade battle saint like him was so weak. Xiao Meng took out some crystals and handed them to Bufang. Then, he hurriedly turned around and left Fang Fang's little store. As a general of the empire, even if he was poisoned, he still had to be at the forefront of the battle. This was his pride as a general. In the main hall, currently, many experts had gathered in the main hall. They were anxiously trying to think of a way to repel the enemy when the sound of the horn resounded from outside the city gate. This caused Ji Qingshue's complexion to abruptly change. "Damn it! Ji Qingyu, you broke your promise!" Ji Qingshue's complexion became extremely unsightly. Not only him, but everyone else in the main hall also had a drastic change in expression. Ji Qingyu's army had the support of the Shura sect. There were many experts in the army, and they might not be a match for the Shura sect. Originally, they wanted to wait for the arrival of their respective supreme beings. That way they would have some confidence. However, the enemy had chosen to start the battle directly. They immediately panicked. Ji Qingxue left the main hall, changed into his military uniform, and followed the army toward the imperial city's gates. As soon as he left the palace, he was greeted by a pale Xiao Meng. Ji Qingxue looked at the feeble Xiao Meng and let out a sigh. They walked toward the city gates, climbed up to the top of the tower, and looked down at Ji Qingyu's army. Black clouds pressed down on the city, threatening to destroy it. The roars of the densely packed soldiers waving the spears in their hands resounded in everyone's ears, striking fear into their hearts. Ji Qingxue wore a set of armor that seemed to be cast from gold. His expression was solemn as he stood on the tower, looking down at the army below. It seemed that due to Ji Qingxue's appearance, the roars of the army gradually stopped. Among the army, Ji Qingyu slowly emerged on a spirit horse. He raised his head and looked straight at Ji Qingxue, who was standing proudly on the city walls. "My dear brother, Don't blame me for attacking ahead of time. Even though I wanted to give you a chance to catch your breath, I had a special reason. Ji Qingyu smiled faintly. Ji Qingshua's expression turned even colder. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of the other party's high-end battle prowess, he would have long ordered the army under him to charge out. However, because the other party had a supreme being expert overseeing them, he had to swallow his anger. Walala! Ji Qingxue didn't say anything. Behind Ji Qingyu, Zhao Mushing also appeared on a spirit horse. A cold smile hung on Zhao Mushing's face. He stared at Ji Qingxue and clicked his tongue as he shook his head. Then, his gaze suddenly turned cold. Do you want to know why we attacked the city in advance? It's only because of one person in your city. Hand over that person, and maybe we will temporarily retreat and continue the negotiation tomorrow. Ji Qingxue frowned. Attacking just for one person, was this looking down on his light wind empire? There was anger in his heart, but he couldn't let it out. He could only angrily slap the stone of the city wall. Who is it? Ji Qingshue's angry voice reverberated in the air. Ji Qingyu sneered. Zhao Mushing also laughed disdainfully. Actually, you're not unfamiliar with this person. It's Fang Fang's little stores. Bu Fang, Zhao Mushing slowly said. As soon as these words left his mouth, it immediately caused a commotion on the city wall. What? Owner Bu? Ji Qingshue's expression changed drastically as well. These people actually wanted them to hand over Owner Bu? Why was their target Bu Fang? Owner Bu was such a low-key person. Bu Fang's reputation was extremely prominent within the imperial city. The experts on the city wall all knew what kind of existence Bu Fang was. Fang Fang's little store had a supreme beast overseeing it. How could they hand over Bu Fang? Even if they were willing, Bu Fang would never obediently leave with them. Impossible. It's impossible to hand over Bu Fang. Ji Qingxue resolutely refused. Regardless of whether it was Bu Fang's culinary skills or Bu Fang's strength and background, Ji Qingxue could not simply hand him over. Bu Fang was a special existence within the imperial city. The empire's jurisdiction did not include him. Zhao Mushing seemed to have already expected Ji Qingxue to refuse. He was not in a hurry and only slightly waved his hand. It's fine if you don't hand him over. Just make that Bu Fang hand over the thing he just obtained. Thing? What thing? Everyone on the city wall was confused. They had no idea what was going on. After Zhao Mushing, two blood-colored figures floated out and hovered in the sky. The eyes of these two figures were incomparably cold. It was as if a monstrous sea of blood was tumbling beneath their eyes. Hand over that person and you can live. If you don't, you can all die. A blood guard's hoarse voice rang out. It was filled with arrogance. The experts on the city wall were instantly enraged. Especially the experts from the godly temple of the wildlands. Their eyes widened. Shura sect demon. Many people felt a chill in their hearts. They had dealt with the Shura sect before. Their respective sects had records of the Shura sect. Therefore, they were very clear about the hierarchy of the Shura sect. Dressed in a blood-colored robe and emitting such a powerful aura, they must be the Shura sect blood guards. Every blood guard was at the peak of a half-step supreme being. They were only a step away from the supreme being realm. During the Shura sect's golden age, there were more than a dozen blood guards. That was when the southern region was ruled by the Shura sect. Naturally, these experts were no strangers to the blood guards. An existence at the peak of a half-step supreme being was enough to kill almost everyone on the scene. Their minds were trembling, and a kind of fear was spreading in them. Your Majesty, we should let Owner Bu hand that thing over to these people. That aura is too terrifying. On top of the city wall, a minister could not withstand the terrifying pressure emitted by the blood guard. His legs trembled as he spoke to Ji Qingxue. After one person opened his mouth, many ministers also said the same thing. Since they only needed to hand over one thing to delay the negotiations until tomorrow, why not hand it over? Bufang's store was guarded by a supreme beast. However, if they only wanted Bufang to hand over one thing, it shouldn't be too much, right? Shut up. If we agree to this request, how can we maintain our dignity? If we hand over Owner Bu, it means that our dignity will be trampled on. The Empire's dignity will be trampled on. Ji Qingxue, who was wearing a golden armor, waved his arm and glared at the people around him as he shouted. He was extremely disappointed in these ministers. Not to mention the fact that Bufang had helped him before, just based on Bufang's mysterious power. How could they dare to provoke him? Ji Qingxue was not stupid. Therefore, he was determined not to hand over Bufang. However, after the godly temple of the Wildlands elder son's eyes flickered, he actually spoke up. Your Majesty, we can't destroy an empire because of a single person. If we can delay until our godly temple of the Wildlands supreme being arrives, the imperial city will be saved. If a war breaks out now, we will definitely lose. Elder Sun still remembered how Bufang had ignored him. Now that there was such a good opportunity to borrow the Shura sect's power to get rid of Bufang, why not? No means no. Anyone can hand over, but not Owner Bu. Ji Qingxue was still as resolute as ever. Elder Sun's face turned cold as well. Your Majesty, it's not up to you whether you hand him over or not. If you can't delay until our godly temple of the Wildlands supreme being arrives, your empire will be defeated by your hands. Elder Sun said coldly. His words were like pearls, making Ji Qingxue's heart ache. This was a difficult choice, a difficult one. Your Majesty, we can't hand over Owner Bu. Xiao Meng couldn't bear to watch any longer. Even though his face was pale, he still stood up and spoke up. However, before he could finish his words, Elder Sun glared at him and waved his sleeves. Xiao Meng was instantly blown away by a gust of air and spat out blood. What right do you have to speak? All of you, go to Fang Fang's little store and inform Bufang. Make him hand over that object or himself. Elder Sun coldly pointed at the trembling ministers behind Ji Qingxue and roared. Chapter 316. Xiao Yu took a step forward and supported Xiao Ming's body. His face immediately darkened. With a clanging sound, the long sword on his back was unsheathed. The sword flashed like a meteor that was about to tear through the sky. It hovered above his head with the tip of the sword pointed at Elder Sunday. You want to fight with me? The muscles all over Elder Sun's body bulged as true energy gushed out with a loud bang. Raising his hand, a frightening pressure burst forth and pressed down on Xiao Yu. Elder Sun, please stay your hand. Zhang Kong, who had been silent all this while, stepped forward and stood in front of Xiao Yu. He raised his finger and immediately broke apart the pressure of true energy that Elder Sun had gathered. Xiao Yu's face was cold as he sheathed his longsword. He did not have the slightest favorable impression of Elder Sunday. Zhang Kong was the commander of the White Cloud Villa. Elder Sun did not want to offend him. He retracted his pressure and snorted inwardly. What are you looking at? Hurry up and tell Bufang to hand over the item. Elder Sun shouted as he glared at the ministers. The ministers immediately stiffened and hurriedly ran toward the bottom of the city wall. Stop right there. Who dares to go? Ji Qingxue angrily shouted. Your Majesty. Elder Sun also shouted as he glared at Ji Qingxue. The minister hesitated for a moment. Seeing that Ji Qingxue did not say anything else, he turned around and left the city wall. They descended the city wall, gathered a large group of soldiers, and majestically rushed toward Fang Fang's little store. Ji Qingxue's complexion was ashen from anger, but he was helpless. The blood guards below the city wall sneered when they saw Ji Qingxue and the others causing a ruckus. Ji Qingyu, on the other hand, was expressionless as he watched the scene unfold. Fang Fang's little store, an alleyway in the imperial city. Bufang was curled up on a chair with his eyes slightly narrowed. The warm sunlight shone on his body, giving off a warm feeling. He was somewhat intoxicated by this feeling. Blackie was snoring at the entrance of the store. Ouyang Xiaoyi was sitting beside the path understanding tree, wholeheartedly cultivating. The sound of Xiao Xiaolong practicing cooking rang out from the kitchen. Everything seemed so peaceful and peaceful. Suddenly, a series of messy and hurried footsteps rang out in the alley, waking up Bufang, who was in a light sleep. Bufang opened his eyes and looked expressionlessly at the group of imperial ministers who were jogging towards him. There were many soldiers around the ministers. This group of people gathered in front of Bufang's restaurant. The ministers looked at Bufang as if they were looking at a treasure. This gaze caused Bufang's entire body to involuntarily shiver, and his hair stood on end. What were these uncles trying to do? Why was his gaze so strange? Owner Bu. This group of ministers naturally knew about the background of Fong Fong's little store. Nowadays, everyone in the imperial city knew how terrifying Fong Fong's little store was. Naturally, no one dared to provoke it. Please come in for the meal, Bufang said lightly. Owner Bu, today we are not here to eat. We are here to ask for your help, the minister said with a bitter smile. Bufang was taken aback. They were actually here to ask for his help? Could it be that they wanted to borrow money? No way, he had no money. Standing up from his chair, Bufang clasped his hands behind his back and silently walked into the store. At this moment, it was best to remain silent. Owner Bu, don't go, we want to borrow something from you. The minister looked at Bufang, who was about to enter the store, and a trace of anxiety appeared in his eyes. Bufang's heart skipped a beat. As expected, this guy was really here to borrow money from him. Subconsciously, Bufang's footsteps became faster and faster. The ministers almost vomited blood. Borrowing something from you? Why are you running? Can't you have a proper conversation? Owner Bu, do you have anything related to the Shura sect? One of the ministers couldn't wait any longer and hurriedly asked. Bufang, who was halfway into the kitchen, suddenly stopped. You want to borrow something related to the Shura sect from me? Bufang squinted his eyes. Then, with a thought, the magic array formed by the 5 broken jade talismans appeared in his hand. He turned around and waved the magic array in his hand, saying, Are you talking about this? The ministers had almost given up hope. They didn't expect that Bufang would actually respond to them. After they got over their initial shock, they cursed Bufang in their hearts. Did this guy really think they were here to borrow money? That's right, that's right. I wonder if Owner Bu is willing to lend it to us? One of the minister's eyes lit up. Owner Bu really had something related to the Shura sect. Why were they looking for this trash with such great fanfare? The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched. He casually tossed the magic array into the air above his palm. Then, Bufang put it into the system's dimensional storage. No, Bufang replied expressionlessly. The ministers wanted to cry. They thought that Owner Bu was going to throw the magic array over. They were ready to catch it, but in the end, it was put away by Bufang. Why should I lend it to you? This concerns the survival of the Light Wind Empire, the minister hurriedly said. The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched. A magic array formed by these 5 broken jade talismans was actually related to the survival of the Light Wind Empire? Was this broken thing worth so much? With a thought, Bufang took out the magic array and observed it in surprise. After observing it, he put it away again. There was nothing special about it. The blood guards outside the city gate were so depressed that they almost vomited blood. Their jade plate could sense the traces of the soul congregation array, but what was the meaning of the blinking dots on the jade plate? He wanted to rush into the imperial city, rush into the alleyway, and take back the soul congregation array. The ministers were very depressed. They hurriedly told Bufang everything that happened on the city wall, hoping to move Bufang and make him hand over the Shura sect's item. Why should I hand over this jade talisman formation? Go back and tell the blood guards. If they have the ability, come and take it from my store, Bufang said calmly. Then, he sent the ministers away. Owner Bu, if you hand over the magic array, you will be able to buy the Light Wind Empire a day of negotiation. This is extremely important to the Light Wind Empire. One of the ministers said reluctantly. Why should I hand over something that I obtained with my own strength? Bufang asked. Then, he ignored them and went back into the kitchen. The ministers' faces were gloomy, but they had no other choice. They didn't dare to cause trouble in the store. After all, the store was notorious. If you do this, you will put the people of the imperial city in deep trouble. One of the ministers was still unwilling and continued to shout toward the kitchen. Don't use the people to pressure me. Cram. An indifferent roar rang out from the kitchen, startling the group of ministers. After sensing for a long time, they realized that the clothes-stripping demon and the supreme beast hadn't appeared. Only then did they heave a long sigh of relief. Then, they left dejectedly. Facing the stubborn and smelly owner Bu, whose temper was like a stone in a latrine pit, they were really at their wits' end. The group of ministers returned to the city wall. The atmosphere on the city wall was as heavy as ever. How is it? Did you get the item? Elder Sun asked coldly. No. No, Owner Bu told us to scram. The minister was frightened by Elder Sun's imposing aura, causing him to tremble. The blood guards at the foot of the city wall couldn't hold it in any longer. Their eyes were bloodshot. So what you're saying is that the boss really has what we're looking for? Very good. The two blood guards looked at each other and saw the impatience in each other's eyes. They gathered their true energy and were about to rush into the imperial city. However, just as they gathered their true energy, a loud and clear cry came from the sky. A huge intense sun bird spread its wings and flew over. Waves of heat rolled around it. On the back of the intense sun bird sat a chubby old man. The old man had an amiable expression on his face. He held an ice cube with a wooden handle in his hand and chewed on it in satisfaction. The ardent sun bird let out a cry, then landed on the city wall. On the city wall, the experts of the 100,000 Mountains Clear Sky Pagoda were delighted. They bowed and shouted, "Greetings, great Elder Yi Yunqing!" Chapter 317. The ardent sunbird had a fire attribute. It was a powerful spirit beast that lived in the 100,000 mountains and was extremely rare. Every ardent sunbird was extremely powerful because it was an 8th-grade spirit beast. When it spat out flames, even a 7th-grade warrior would be burned to ashes. There were only 2 such ardent sunbirds in the 100,000 mountains, and each of them was extremely precious. No one would have thought that one of the ardent sunbirds would actually land here today. Moreover, on the back of the ardent sunbird sat a chubby old man. This old man was dressed in an unrestrained manner, and his white hair was disheveled in the wind. However, this was not the main reason why he attracted everyone's attention. The chubby old man attracted everyone's attention mainly because he was holding a lump of ice in his hand and eating it non-stop. Riding a ardent sunbird and eating a lump of ice. How could he have such fun? Yi Yunqing, the chubby elder, was the great elder of the Clear Sky Pagoda in the 100,000 mountains. His cultivation was unfathomable. As soon as he appeared, a terrifying aura emanated from him, suppressing the 2 restless blood guards into calming them down. Delicious. It's a pity that after slaughtering so many 8th-grade flood dragons and extracting so many dragon livers, I only managed to get this one. This old man's culinary skills are still lacking compared to Owner Bu's. The chubby old man looked at the lump of ice in his hand and couldn't help but sigh. He shook his head and then stuffed the lump of ice into his mouth. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the chubby old man's expression changed dozens of times. Even the experts of the Clear Sky Pagoda were dumbfounded. It turned out that their great elder could make so many unprecedented expressions. Slurp. The chubby old man bit down, and a stream of black juice spilled out from the ice lump, drawing a beautiful arc. The chubby old man's eyes widened, and he hurriedly stretched out his hand to protect the juice. This was his 8-spirit fruit vinegar, the precious 8-spirit fruit vinegar. He accidentally spilled it out. As the chubby old man chewed, a sour and refreshing feeling spread throughout his body. He couldn't help but scrunch up his face and tremble all over. After swallowing the lump of ice in his mouth, the chubby old man stretched his neck and burped. I put too much vinegar. The chubby old man tugged at his beard in annoyance and said regretfully, how precious was the 8-spirit fruit vinegar. He actually put too much of it. The people on the city wall were dumbfounded, and the people below the city wall were speechless. This old man, is he here to make a joke? The chubby old man let out a long breath, which was accompanied by a sour smell. Everyone on the city wall looked embarrassed, especially the experts from the Clear Sky Pagoda. The great elder didn't have any other strong points, but he loved to eat Shura sect bloodguards. What are they doing? The chubby old man sat cross-legged on the back of the intense sunbird, his gaze fixed on the 2 bloodguards below as he asked. The moment the elderly man's gaze landed on them, the 2 bloodguards felt their bodies tense up as a tremendous pressure suddenly erupted. Although the bloodguards were at the peak of half-step Supreme Being, in reality, they were no different from Supreme Being experts. Even though the 2 bloodguards sensed a terrifying Supreme Being aura coming from the old man, they did not cower in the slightest. They were the bloodguards, and also the Azura's Gate's death warriors. I heard that you want us to hand over Onerbu? Do you know how important Onerbu is? What an excellent chef he is. How many people would be intoxicated by his dishes? How could we hand over Onerbu to you, a bunch of demons? The chubby old man was suddenly agitated. He stood up from the back of the intense sun-bird and waved his hands and feet. The intense sun-bird's slender neck twisted, as if it was disdainful. The 2 bloodguards' faces froze. They were too lazy to talk nonsense with the old man. Both of them shouted loudly as their hair fluttered in the wind. The aura on their bodies was like a monstrous sea of blood. Blood-colored true energy shot up to the sky. Boom, boom! The ground beneath them shook as the 2 of them shot up. Blood-colored light encircled their bodies, turning into blood-colored dragons that swam around their bodies. The chubby old man snorted and lightly tapped the back of the intense sun-bird with the tip of his foot. His chubby body floated up like a falling leaf. Like a golden rooster standing on one leg, he soared into the sky. Surging true energy erupted, turning into a blazing bird spreading its wings behind his back. The cries of the blazing bird resounded through the sky. The roars of the 2 blood flood dragons were also deafening. Boom! The 3 of them bombarded each other in the void. Waves of genuine chi at the level of the 9th grade spread out like ripples in the sky. The oppressive atmosphere made the hearts of the people below sink. The chubby old man was, after all, a 9th grade Supreme Being. Even though the 2 bloodguards were comparable to Supreme Beings, they were not true Supreme Beings. After a single blow, the difference in strength was obvious. 2 blood-colored figures descended from the sky. Their auras were a little weak as they landed on the ground. They raised their heads to look at the sky with solemn expressions. The chubby old man supported his waist with one hand and stroked his beard with the other. He snorted coldly. His infuriating look made the blood of the 2 bloodguards boil. They wanted nothing more than to charge forward and tear this old man into pieces. Buzz, however, just as they were about to make their move, a slight ripple came from behind them. The 2 bloodguards immediately stopped their movements. Their faces lit up with joy as they looked behind them. A warrior wrapped in a black robe slowly walked out from Ji Qingyu's army. He walked very slowly. Every step he took brought along a whistling gale. As he continued to walk, the old man actually stepped into the air. His robe fluttered as he walked toward the chubby old man. "Do you think my Shura sect has no one?" A faint and old voice echoed on the city tower. Then, the black-robed old man smiled faintly as he faced the chubby old man in the air. "Venerable sir! Venerable sir has made his move. This old man is dead for sure." The eyes of the two blood guards lit up with excitement. The Venerable Sir was a 9th-grade supreme being of their Shura sect. His cultivation was unparalleled. Dealing with this chubby old man who only knew how to eat was no problem at all. The chubby old man stared at the other old man with a solemn expression. The Shura sect Venerable was one of the giants of the Shura sect. His cultivation was unparalleled, and his methods were strange. He was extremely difficult to deal with. "You two enter the city and capture that Bufang. That thing must be taken back." The Venerable Sir's voice reverberated and was transmitted to the ears of the two blood guards. The blood guards immediately focused their eyes and nodded solemnly. The soul congregation array was the key to completely awakening the departed soul orb. Every soul congregation array contained an enormous amount of soul essence. It was extremely important to the Shura sect, and they could not afford to lose it. The two blood guards immediately dashed toward the top of the city wall. "Stop right there." The chubby old man's eyes widened. He twisted his body and planned to rush toward the two blood guards. However, before he could make a move, a pitch-black and majestic true energy stream ruthlessly smashed towards him, sealing off his path forward. "Your opponent is me," the Venerable Sir said calmly with his hands clasped behind his back. The chubby old man took a deep breath. His true energy surged and he began fighting with the Venerable Sir in the sky. Blood-colored true energy surged from the two blood guards. In an instant they turned into two beams of crimson light and dashed toward the top of the city wall. Many people's expressions changed drastically. Zhang Kong's face froze. He stood in front of the two blood guards and displayed the sword art of the White Cloud Villa. Suddenly, a fierce sword energy gushed out from behind him and slashed toward the two blood guards. "Get lost!" one of the blood guards said in a hoarse voice. With a wave of his hand, blood-colored true energy swept out and shattered Zhang Kong's sword energy inch by inch. Zhang Kong's face reddened and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body was sent flying backward and slammed heavily onto the city wall. They were both 8th-grade war gods, but the gap between their cultivation levels was enormous. Zhang Kong's face instantly turned ashen. The blood guards stomped on the city wall. The ancient city wall crumbled under the force of their stomps and was covered in cracks. However, Zhang Kong was severely injured with just one move. Who else could stop them other than a supreme being? The experts on the city wall did not even dare to breathe loudly. They watched in fear as the two figures dashed down and fell into the city. With a single thought, they locked onto the location where the Soul Congregation array appeared and dashed toward it. Ji Qingshue's face was unsightly. He looked worriedly in the direction where the blood guards disappeared. Even though Owner Bu had a supreme beast protecting him, these two blood guards were also ruthless people who could fight against a supreme being. Owner Bu could only pray for his own good. Chapter 3:18 Light Wind Empire's capital, City Gate. Above the vault of heaven, thunder rumbled. Terrifying waves of true energy constantly spread out. Even the clouds seemed to be scattered by the rumbling of true energy. Two silhouettes walked on the clouds, faintly discernible as they exchanged blows. The collision between the two was extremely violent, with energy bursting out. The crowd below raised their heads to watch the battle with fear on their faces. These were Supreme Being experts, existences at the Supreme Being level. King Yu. Now is the time for us to attack the city. The battle above their heads continued, but Zhao Mushing no longer paid attention to it. Instead, he moved closer to Ji Qingyu and whispered. The arrival of the Supreme Being from the Clear Sky Pagoda made Zhao Mushing feel a sense of danger. If they waited until the Supreme Being experts from the other forces arrived, then it would be much more difficult for them to attack the city. Even though they also had a Supreme Being on their side, he was only one person and couldn't split himself into two. Once the Supreme Beings from the other forces arrived, under the protection of so many Supreme Beings, their chances of success would become minuscule. What Zhao Mushing thought, Ji Qingyu naturally thought as well. It was normal to have this kind of worry. However, Ji Qingyu still had another worry in mind. It was the two blood guards who entered the imperial city to cause trouble for Bufang. If Zhao Mushing wanted to attack the city, the two blood guards had to be able to capture Bufang. But would Bufang really be captured? After all, the store was guarded by a supreme beast. If the two blood guards were to fail, they would anger the supreme beast. At that time, the supreme beast would make a move, and the outcome of the battle would be hard to say. Forget it. Let's wait a little longer. If the blood guards successfully capture Bufang, then we will attack the city immediately. Ji Qingyu said resolutely and decisively. Zhao Mushing was stunned and didn't say anything. Ji Qingyu said this for insurance. Zhao Mushing suddenly realized that he was a little too optimistic. Even though the two blood guards were existences that could fight against a supreme being. Two blood-colored figures rapidly shuttled through the alleys of the imperial city at an extremely fast speed. An afterimage shot past, stirring up a gust of wind as the two figures disappeared. As they approached the alleys of Fong Fong's little store, the two blood-colored figures finally stopped. These were the Azura's Gate blood guards. One of the blood guards held his jade plate, and the light spots on the plate flickered violently. This is the store in this alley. The last time the Soul Congregation array disappeared was in this alley. One of the blood guards said in a hoarse voice. Then, the two of them looked at each other, nodded, and rushed toward the alleyway. As soon as they entered the alleyway, the two of them stopped. With their cultivation at the peak of the half-step Supreme Being realm, they could sense a terrifying sense of danger coming from the store. Jian Pu's small shop was not very big. A big black dog was sleeping soundly in front of the door, and a figure was curled up on the chair. No matter how he looked at it, this store didn't seem dangerous at all. The blood guards furrowed their brows as a trace of doubt appeared in their eyes. Then, they walked toward the store. The black puppy, who was lying on the ground, wrinkled its nose. It opened its eyes and looked at the blood guard in confusion. This guy's body smells really bad. Blackus snorted, turned its head away in disgust, and went back to sleep. Bufang, who was curled up on the chair, was startled when he saw the two blood guards walking toward him. When Bufang saw the blood guards also saw him. The eyes of the two blood guards suddenly lit up, and a murderous aura appeared on their faces. Brat! Hurry up and call the owner of your store out. One of the blood guards cautiously observed the surroundings. They didn't make a move immediately, as this store gave them a sense of danger. The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched, and his body, which was curled up on the chair, immediately sat up straight. He looked at them and said, "I am the owner of this store." "You?" The blood guard's eyes widened. Then he sneered and took a step forward. As if the ground had shrunk to an inch, the blood guard appeared in front of Bufang in an instant. A terrifying aura erupted, and even his hair fluttered. The blood guard's face was almost touching Bufang's face. Bufang calmly looked at the blood guard, then he furrowed his brows. The thick smell of blood on the blood guard's body made him feel disgusted. "Don't come so close, I'm not familiar with you." Bufang waved his hand and said, "Since you are the owner of this store, then you must have the Shura Sect's Soul Congregation array on you, am I right? Hand it over and I will spare your life," the blood guard said coldly. Blood-colored true energy circulated on his palm. Buzz, just as he finished speaking, he felt a chill run down his spine. He raised his head and saw a red-eyed lump of iron staring at him. This lump of iron, Soul Congregation array? Bufang raised his eyebrows. He lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, Then his entire body, along with the chair, rapidly retreated, distancing himself from the blood guard. He stood up from the chair, raised his hand, and with a thought, the array formed by the 5 broken jade talismans appeared in his hand. "You're talking about this, right?" Bufang expressionlessly said. "Soul Congregation Array." The moment Bufang took out the array, the eyes of the 2 blood guards lit up, and the jade plates in their hands glowed brightly. It was indeed on this person. They didn't find the wrong person. As long as they brought the Soul Congregation Array back, they would be able to complete the High Priestess mission. The 2 blood guards' hearts burned with passion. "That's right. Quickly hand over the Soul Congregation Array to me." Bang! One of the blood guards' aura suddenly surged. His eyes widened as he shouted at Bufang. Bufang curled his lips, casually tossed the jade talisman array into the air, then put it into the system's dimensional storage, incomparably calm. "No way! You're courting death." One of the hot-tempered blood guards was instantly enraged. His blood energy gushed out, and his entire body was shrouded in a blood-colored radiance. He dashed toward Bufang like a blood-colored lightning, intending to capture Bufang. Bang, however, just as the blood guard rushed into the store, he was intercepted by Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai's red mechanical eyes had unknowingly turned purple. The purple was extremely deep, causing the blood guard's hair to stand on end. Xiao Bai punched out, smashing into the blood guard's body. An enormous force that exceeded the blood guard's expectations exploded. The blood guard's figure was directly blown away, landing outside the store. He rolled a few times and stabilized his body. This puppet actually has the strength of a 9th grade. The 2 blood guards' eyes were filled with astonishment. They looked at each other, and their expressions became serious. However, so what if it had the strength of a 9th grade? With the 2 blood guards working together, they could even face off against a supreme being. Boom boom! True energy burst forth, and the blood energy on their bodies suddenly soared into the sky. Like 2 beams of light, they shot straight into the sky. The crowd on the city wall looked at the 2 beams of blood-colored light rising from within the city, and their bodies trembled. This Shura sect sorcerer. Could it be that he has already started fighting with the Supreme Being Beast in Owner Boo's store? Who will win and who will lose? The outcome of this battle will determine the outcome of this war. Many people couldn't help but murmur. Ji Qingyu also fixed his gaze on the blood-colored light beam. Of course, he hoped that the blood guards would win, but he had a bad premonition in his heart. Bufang's expressionless face once again appeared in his mind, and his heart suddenly skipped a beat. Bufang indifferently looked at the 2 blood guards who exploded with blood-colored true energy. The cultivation of these 2 was really strong. That pressure was the strongest pressure that Bufang had ever felt. Xiao Bai's purple eyes flickered. One of his arms had already turned into a huge machete, and a cold light circulated around it. He swung the machete and pointed it at the 2 blood guards. In an instant, Xiao Bai's figure burst out, rushing into the middle of the 2 blood guards. Buzz! The 2 blood-colored flood dragons tumbled, and with terrifying fluctuations, they directly poured down on Xiao Bai. Boom boom boom! The entire alleyway collapsed in an instant and the walls were destroyed. 3 figures were colliding at high speed. Every time they collided, a loud explosion would erupt. Xiao Bai didn't have true energy, but his mechanical body was incomparably hard, and he was invincible in close combat. The 2 blood guards relied on the blood-colored flood dragons to stall Xiao Bai. After all, they were existences that could resist a 9th-grade supreme being. Xiao Bai actually found it hard to win in such a short period of time. Blackus sprawled on the ground, yawning lazily. It didn't seem to mind. Bufang, on the other hand, walked to the door, watching the battle with twinkling eyes. His mind flickered, and black smoke curled around his right arm. Then, a small wok expanded and floated in front of him. The black turtle constellation Wak quietly floated in front of him. Bu Fang's slender fingers reached out, caressing the cold edge of the black turtle constellation Wak. A heavy feeling lingered in Bu Fang's heart. Then, Bu Fang's eyes focused. He single-handedly grabbed the black turtle constellation Wak, took a deep breath, and fixed his eyes on the blood guards who were engaged in a fierce battle. 1, 2, 3. Go! Chapter 319. The black turtle constellation Wak was made from the shell of an ancient black tortoise. It was incomparably hard and weighed more than 10,000 pounds. Perhaps because Bu Fang was its owner, he couldn't feel the weight of the black turtle constellation Wak at all. However, this didn't stop Bu Fang from using the Wak to smash people. It was the first time Bu Fang saw Xiao Bai being entangled by others. In the past, Xiao Bai would always suppress his enemies with irresistible force and beat them up. However, today, in the hands of these two blood guards, Xiao Bai was being entangled. The blood-colored flood dragon roared incessantly as it tumbled about. It really made one's scalp tingle. Every time Xiao Bai slashed the blood flood dragon in half, more blood energy would condense and transform into a new blood flood dragon. Therefore, Bu Fang felt that he should do something to help Xiao Bai. Bu Fang hadn't obtained the 10,000 bestial flames that the system mentioned. In his hands, the black turtle constellation Wak was really just a Wak. However, Bu Fang suddenly thought that this Wak was really convenient to use to smash people. It weighed more than 10,000 pounds. If this Wak smashed down, it would definitely make one cry for their grandmother. Bu Fang held the edge of the black turtle constellation Wak. An ice-cold feeling instantly flowed through his palm and into his body. However, Bu Fang's heart was burning with passion. His body took a step back, and the black turtle constellation Wak was also thrown behind him. He turned around and suddenly dashed out. Then, the black turtle constellation Wak left his hand. Go! Bu Fang calmly shouted. Then, the black turtle constellation Wak whizzed out. This black turtle constellation Wak actually had a special effect. It could be enlarged or shrunk. However, this would consume the true energy in Bu Fang's body. This time, Bu Fang didn't transfer true energy into the Wak like he did with the dragon bone kitchen knife. Otherwise, the black turtle constellation Wak might change. The pitch-black black turtle constellation Wak swayed like a small boat in the vast sea. It swayed toward the huge waves that were rising to the sky. The momentum was not small. Naturally, the two blood guards also noticed it. One of the blood guards said in disdain. This was because he had seen through Bu Fang's cultivation level at first glance. This kid was merely a 6th-grade battle emperor. In the eyes of an expert like him, a 6th-grade battle emperor was no different from an ant. A single slap from him could kill a whole bunch of them. Therefore, he naturally did not take the attack of a 6th-grade battle emperor seriously. It was like an ant baring its fangs and claws at you, saying that it wanted to bite you. How would you react? At most, he would chuckle and slap them to death. The black Wak that floated over was the same. They didn't take him seriously at all. Right now, their main target was still that incomparably formidable lump of metal. This lump of metal was truly formidable. Even if the two of them were to join forces, they would be able to shake even an utmost being. Yet, to think that they would still be at a disadvantage in the hands of this lump of metal. Bang bang! With two explosive sounds, the two blood flood dragons on the blood guards' bodies were once again chopped off by Xiao Bai's machete. Their blood energy scattered in all directions. The blood guards retreated several steps. Their eyes revealed a ruthless glint. The blood flood dragons condensed once again. They actually coiled around each other and charged toward Xiao Bai once again. A black Wak swayed as it floated over at a slow speed. With the cultivation level of the blood guards, unless their speed surpassed the speed of sound, everything else was as slow as a snail in their eyes. A Wak that crawled like a snail was smashing over. Was it here to give them a massage? The blood guards sneered disdainfully in their hearts. Within the store, Bufang swung his arm. Even though he was the owner of the Black Turtle Constellation Walk and couldn't feel the weight of the walk, it was still a big walk after all. The weight was not light. When Bufang swung it like that, he felt that his arm was a little stiff. After swinging his arm, Bufang's eyes lit up as he stared at the Black Turtle Constellation Walk. Get lost! The Black Turtle Constellation Walk floated for a few seconds before it finally floated to the side of one of the Blood Guard. The Blood Guard glanced at the walk and immediately snorted coldly. Without the slightest care, he threw out a wave of blood-colored energy, intending to smash the walk. It was just a walk. Was it going to fly to the heavens? From the Blood Guard's point of view, even an ordinary 7th-grade battle saint wouldn't be able to withstand his stream of energy, let alone a walk made by a 6th-grade battle emperor. The blood-colored energy shot out like a dragon and fiercely collided with the Black Turtle Constellation Walk in the air. There was no expected explosion, nor was the Black Turtle Constellation Walk sent flying. When the blood-colored energy hit the Black Turtle Constellation Walk, it was like an egg hitting a rock. With a pop, it scattered. The Black Turtle Constellation Walk didn't even shake and continued to fly. When the Black Turtle Constellation Walk's gale whistled over, the Blood Guard was finally startled. This walk, why is it still here? The Blood Guard's face stiffened as he exclaimed. You didn't smash the walk? Another Blood Guard asked in confusion. He was in the middle of a battle with a 9th-grade puppet. If he didn't smash the walk away, was he supposed to allow it to interfere? The expression of the first Blood Guard froze. Then, he let out a long breath. Blood-colored true energy wrapped around his arm, and he swatted at the Black Turtle Constellation Walk. He didn't care about the Black Turtle Constellation Walk at all. As he swatted, his eyes were still focused on the iron lump puppet that had just landed on the ground and was once again charging at him with a monstrous roar. The Black Turtle Constellation Walk swayed back and forth. Finally, under the bright eyes of Bufang, the walk made intimate contact with the Blood Guard's palm. The Blood Guard's palm, which was wrapped with true energy, finally landed on the walk. His expression finally changed, because he realized that his palm actually didn't move the walk in the slightest. It was as if his palm had landed on a towering mountain. Are you kidding me? You're just a walk. The heavy black walk didn't slow down at all. The Blood Guard's arm was instantly bent by the pressure. While he was still in a daze, he realized that the walk was heading toward him. The cold and heavy side of the pot suddenly pressed down on his arm, and under his incredulous gaze, it smashed onto his head. Damn it, bang! A crisp sound rang out, melodious and pleasing to the ear. The other Blood Guard's entire body trembled. He turned his head in astonishment and saw a scene that left him dumbstruck. The Blood Guard who was smashed by the walk was sent flying far into the air. He was dumbstruck. His eyes became empty and his mouth was slightly agape. His face was filled with confusion. The Blood Guard who was smashed by the Black Turtle Constellation Walk felt as if his entire world had turned gray. The world in front of him was flipped upside down and constantly changing. The sharp pain from his forehead caused the roots of his teeth to go numb. This walk really wanted to ascend to the heavens. With a bang, the Black Turtle Constellation Walk turned into black smoke and dissipated. It returned to Bufang's side. The Black Turtle Constellation Walk quietly floated in front of Bufang. Bufang happily touched the edge of the black walk. It was indeed worthy of being called the Black Turtle Constellation Walk that weighed more than 10,000 pounds. Even though it didn't smash the Blood Guard to death, it was still pretty good to stun him. Bufang felt a little regret in his heart. However, he soon felt relieved. After all, his current cultivation was only at the level of a 6th-grade battle emperor. To be able to stun someone who was half a step away from becoming a supreme being was already very impressive. Taking advantage of the fact that one of the Blood Guards was still in a daze, The purple glow in Xiao Bai's eyes suddenly intensified. With a loud bang, the bricks under Xiao Bai's feet were instantly shattered. A huge force erupted and his body seemed to have transformed into a bolt of lightning. In an instant, he charged toward the stupefied blood guard. The other blood guard's expression immediately changed. "Wake up!" he hurriedly shouted, wanting to wake up the stupefied blood guard. With this shout, the blood guard finally woke up leisurely. The scene in front of him also gradually became clear. He was a little angry out of humiliation. His heart felt as uncomfortable as if he had eaten **T. He, a dignified supreme being at the peak of half a step away from becoming a supreme being, was actually smashed by a 6th-grade battle emperor. Where was his face? Buzz, the purple glow swept across his body. The blood guard, who had flown into a rage out of humiliation, suddenly felt a chill run down his entire body. He widened his eyes. He saw Xiao Bai's ice-cold gaze. The big chopper reflected a cold light under the sunlight. Damn it! He felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. With a whistling sound, the big chopper slashed toward him. This slash from Xiao Bai was as fast as lightning. The air seemed to be torn apart by this slash. The swishing sound caused the blood guard to feel a chill run down his spine. It was true that the two blood guards could withstand the 9th-grade puppet, Xiao Bai, head-on. However, that was under the premise that they relied on true energy to carry out long-range attacks. His fleshly body was simply incomparable to the freakish body of this puppet. This close-range attack, swoosh. The big chopper slashed down. Blood splattered everywhere. The other blood guard pulled at the right time, preventing the dumbfounded blood guard from being chopped into two halves by Xiao Bai's slash. However, one of his arms was directly chopped off. As blood splattered, a miserable howl rang out. The eyes of the blood guard, who had one arm chopped off, were about to spurt out blood. With his remaining hand, he grabbed and sucked back the blood and his arm that was chopped off. Xiao Bai stopped hovering in the air, and once again landed on the ground. The moment he landed, he once again burst forth and continued to charge toward the two blood guards. His purple eyes flickered, and the blade was like a dragon. Go! Go quickly! We are no match for this puppet. The blood guard, who had one arm chopped off, said. Then, without hesitation, they turned around and shot into the distance. Since they could fly in the air, Xiao Bai was unable to catch up to them. Boom! Xiao Bai once again landed on the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. Inside the store, Bu Fong held the black turtle Blackwalk with one hand and was about to smash it again. He did not expect that the two cowards would actually run away. Feeling bored, Bu Fong moved his mind. The black turtle constellation walk turned into black smoke and dissipated, returning to the symbol on Bu Fong's wrist. Smacking his lips, Bu Fong rubbed his chin. There was nothing that a dull walk couldn't solve. If one walk didn't work, then he would use two. Chapter 320. Light Wind Empire's Imperial City, outside the city. A wave of terrifying energy dispersed with a loud rumble. The clouds seemed to be on the verge of exploding. A silhouette shot down from the clouds and landed on the ground below the city walls. It was as if a sledgehammer had slammed into the ground, causing the ground to tremble as if it was about to shatter. The crowd could see the fine cracks spreading out like a spider's web. Ji Qingyu's troops retreated a little, distancing themselves from that spot. Everyone looked at the dust-filled area with grave expressions. The clear sky pagoda of the 100,000 mountains is only SOSO. A cold laugh resounded in the sky. It was filled with disdain. Zhao Mushing, who was riding a spirit horse beside Ji Qingyu, smirked. The venerable master had indeed won. Buzz. The crowd on the city walls paled. The warriors of the 100,000 mountains felt their hearts sink to the bottom. Their great elder was defeated? Bah! Evil man, don't get ahead of yourself. With an angry snort, a black silhouette suddenly enlarged within the dust. A gourd grew larger at a speed visible to the naked eye and smashed toward the venerable master in the sky. The venerable master's eyes flashed with disdain. His black and white hair fluttered in the wind as he lifted his foot. A huge amount of black true chi converged and formed a huge foot in the sky. That foot stomped down fiercely, the gourd collided with the foot and exploded. The inflated gourd trembled and shrank back like a deflated balloon. The chubby elder's eyes widened. He was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. The gourd fell back into his hand. However, the sole of the foot continued to stomp down. Bang! Like an earthquake, a giant footprint appeared in front of the imperial city's gate. Cracks spread out along the footprint. Everyone on the city walls felt as if their hearts had been stomped on and were about to be crushed. Great Elder, the warriors of the 100,000 mountains were on the verge of despair. What are you shouting for? I'm not dead yet. Cough, cough. A figure appeared on the city walls. He crawled up, his face covered in dust, and he coughed incessantly. The chubby elder looked solemnly at the Shura sect venerable standing proudly in the void and sighed in his heart. The Shura sect's cultivation technique was simply too domineering. This venerable's cultivation had already reached the mid-stage of the Supreme Being realm. Coupled with the domineering cultivation technique, he was no match for him at all. The venerable master looked at the chubby old man indifferently. He raised his hand, and the pitch-black true chi swirled around him again. Suddenly, his mind moved and he looked towards a certain spot on the city wall. There, two beams of blood-red light suddenly burst forth, instantly speeding past, rushing out of the city wall and hovering in the void. As the blood-red light dissipated, the two blood guards were revealed. The blood guards have returned. It seems that they have retrieved the soul congregation array. The venerable master suddenly thought of something. However, when he saw the appearance of the two blood guards, his pupils shrank. The two blood guards were in an indescribable sorry state. One of them had even lost an arm and his face was as pale as a sheet of paper. What was going on? How did he get hurt? What happened to retrieving the soul congregation array? You, venerable master, we failed. The uninjured blood guard said to the venerable master with grief and indignation. They didn't expect the store to have a terrifying 9th-grade puppet. The puppet's physical body was incomparably sturdy, and its combat strength was even more valiant. Most importantly, there was a freaking bastard in the store who liked to shift the blame to others. If it weren't for the blame, they would have been able to tangle with the puppet for a while. The pitiful state of the two blood guards immediately stunned everyone. On top of the city wall, Ji Qingxue excitedly slapped his palm on the city wall. As expected, it wasn't that easy to break into Owner Bu's store. It was guarded by a supreme beast. This group of people was simply asking for trouble. Up until now, Ji Qingxue had never seen anyone take advantage of Owner Bu's store. Down below, Ji Qingyu and Zhao Musheng trembled as they sucked in a breath of cold air. The two Shura sect blood guards, who could withstand a Supreme Being powerhouse, were actually defeated, and one of their arms was chopped off. This was simply terrifying. Bufang's expressionless face once again appeared in Ji Qingyu's mind, and he couldn't help but tremble. Zhao Musheng's face was ferocious and full of unwillingness. How could this be? How could two blood guards fail to defeat Bufang? The venerable master took a deep breath and felt a little troubled. The two blood guards actually lost an arm. Could it be that the person who stole the soul congregation array was really that strong? Ha ha! The Shura sect demon is only SOSO. On top of the city wall, the chubby elder saw the pitiful state of the blood guards and immediately burst into laughter. His face was full of excitement. Owner Bu was indeed amazing. No wonder he could cook a delicacy like the dragon liver popsicle. The laughter was extremely ear-piercing. When it reached the blood guards' ears, their eyes turned bloodshot. They were the Shura sect blood guards, and they could not be humiliated. Step down. Take him away to heal his wounds. Let him recover his arm first. The Venerable One held down the blood guard, who was about to make a move, and said calmly. He then looked at the chubby old man below. His brows immediately furrowed. Even though the chubby elder was injured, it wouldn't be easy for the Venerable Master to kill him. After all, he was a 9th-grade Supreme Being. He still had ways to preserve his life. Venerable Master, but the Soul Congregation Array. I will personally retrieve the Soul Congregation Array. You guys go and heal your wounds first. The Shura sect is about to recover, and all blood guards must be present, the Venerable Master said. Patting the blood guards, the 2 blood guards descended and joined Ji Qingyu's army. Then, the Venerable Master turned his head and looked at the city wall. Step by step, he walked toward the city wall. An uproar broke out on top of the city wall. As the Venerable Master walked in the air, the pressure in the air increased. Ji Qingshue's face turned pale. He felt a pressure that made his heart palpitate. The pressure made his legs tremble. A 9th-grade Supreme Being was indeed powerful. Stop! Of course, the chubby elder wouldn't allow the Venerable Master to charge at him unscrupulously. He shouted, You are no match for me. You can't stop me. The Venerable Master said. The chubby elder's face was instantly filled with shame and anger. Even if I can't defeat you, this is the capital of a nation. As Supreme Beings, we shouldn't interfere in this war. Otherwise, even if you slaughter the entire city today, the Supreme Beings of the southern region won't let you off. The chubby elder shouted. The Venerable Master stopped in his track. A strong wind blew past, fluttering his clothes. Let me enter the city. I only want to take back the Shura sect's belongings. I also want to settle the score with that person for injuring our blood guards. He wasn't going to slaughter his way into the city? Hearing the Venerable Master's words, the crowd on the city walls heaved a sigh of relief. The terrifying pressure that burst out from the Venerable Master made them think that this Shura sect demon was going to slaughter the entire Light Wind Imperial City. It turned out that he was just going to cause trouble for owner Bu. Ji Qingxue frowned. He wanted to say something, but Elder Sun pulled him back. Your Majesty, it's better if you don't say anything. To a Supreme Being, the Emperor is nothing but an ant. If you anger that Shura sect demon, it's not worth it to lose your life for nothing, Elder Sun said solemnly. Since that Bufang's store has someone who can injure the blood guards, what else do you have to worry about? You should be worried about yourself and your empire. For a moment, Ji Qingxue was speechless. The chubby old man still wanted to stop him, but the Venerable One was already a little impatient. He glared at them and a murderous aura burst forth. A monstrous black aura swept over like a black cloud, giving people a huge sense of oppression. Don't stop me or I won't be polite anymore. When that happens, don't blame me when the Imperial City turns into a river of blood. The chubby elder was stunned. That's right, to the Shura sect demon, slaughtering an entire city was nothing. The Venerable Master took one step at a time, stepping over their heads, making them feel powerless. The chubby elder watched as the Venerable Master walked toward Fong Fong's little store. He gritted his teeth, stretched his fat waist, and followed. Chapter 321. In the sky above the Imperial City, a black-robed figure slowly traversed the air. With every step, the air seemed to condense and solidify into solid bricks, allowing the figure to tread on the air effortlessly. The Shura sect Venerable's face was gloomy as he sped toward the general location of Fong Fong's little store. Outside the Imperial City, Ji Qingyu ordered his army to wait for orders. This time, he was truly afraid. Even the Shura sect blood guards were defeated and couldn't do anything to Bufang. Could the Venerable really defeat Bufang? Once the Venerable One was defeated, they could only retreat. After all, facing a supreme beast that even the Venerable couldn't handle What reason did they have not to retreat? Inside Fong Fong's little store, after defeating the 2 blood guards, Bu Fong once again took out the talisman magic array. People kept coming to ask for this magic array, which was enough to show how precious it was. Could it be that there was some secret he didn't know about? Bu Fong furrowed his brows and carefully studied it again. The 5 talismans were exquisitely carved, each with a complicated magic array drawn on it. The magic array reflected each other and formed an even more complicated magic array. Although it was called a magic array, it was more like a cage. Inside the magic array, there were white silhouettes baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, howling miserably. This evil thing. Bu Fong placed the magic array on the table. Green smoke curled around his hand, and then the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. What would happen if this magic array was broken? Bu Fong couldn't help but be eager to give it a try. Just as Bu Fong was about to cut open the magic array, a monstrous pressure descended upon the store. This pressure was even stronger than the aura of the 2 blood guards at the peak of half a step to the Supreme Being level. Bu Fong's heart skipped a beat. Rumble, the sky seemed to darken at this moment. It was as if dark clouds were looming over the store. Bu Fong put away the talisman magic array and raised his eyebrows. There were a lot of people coming to cause trouble today. One wave had left and another wave had come? When he arrived at the store's entrance, Bu Fong immediately saw the black-robed expert walking through the air. The appearance of this black robe felt somewhat familiar to him. Aren't these people from the Azura's Gate? Bu Fong had come into contact with the Shura's Gate experts quite a number of times, and he knew that this group of people liked to wear black robes. Previously, the Venerable Master did not know the exact location of the store, but he could sense the aura of the talisman array. After all, the departed soul orb was in his hands, so he was no stranger to the aura of the soul congregation array. The Venerable One's indifferent gaze fell on Bu Fong. Her black and white hair fluttered in the wind. He's only a 6th-grade battle emperor. The Venerable Master furrowed his eyebrows. He could see through Bu Fong's cultivation base at a glance, but he felt even weirder. As he stood in the air, he could feel a sense of danger coming from the store. It was an indescribable sense of danger. If he could sense danger even with his cultivation in the middle stage of the Supreme Being realm, could there be some extraordinary existence hidden within the store? What could it be? The Venerable Master was suspicious. He glanced at Bu Fong, then shifted his gaze to Xiao Bai, who was standing behind Bu Fong. Then, his gaze shifted to Ouyang Xiaoyi, who was stretching her head out. Finally, his gaze fell on the big black dog lying in front of the door. A dog? If there was a possibility of a supreme beast in the store, it would be this plump black dog. But was a dog a supreme beast? Was that even possible? The Venerable Master did not sense any aura of a supreme being from the black dog. Are you the one who injured my Shura's Gate blood guards? A melodious voice rang out. The Venerable Master coldly asked Bu Fong. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. As expected, he took out the talisman magic array and casually waved his hand. You're here for this magic array too, aren't you? Soul Congregation Magic Array. The Venerable Master's pupils constricted as he stared at the talisman magic array in Bu Fong's hand. This was something related to the revival of the Shura's Gate. That's right. Hand it over to me. The Venerable Master took a step forward. Then, his figure blurred as he left behind a trail of afterimages in the air. In a split second, he appeared in front of Bu Fong. Waves of energy billowed in the air as the pressure surged. This was the pressure of a supreme being. However, within the store, Bu Fong was not affected in the slightest. The chubby elder, who was watching from afar, sucked in a breath of cold air as he murmured to himself. As expected, Owner Bu is indeed not simple. To be able to remain calm under the pressure of a supreme being, this kind of bearing is simply monstrous. Today, 3 groups of people have come for this talisman magic array. You're the third. Is this magic array really that important? Bufang casually tossed the magic array in the air, causing the venerable master's energy to fluctuate. An item related to the revival of the Shura's Gate was casually tossed around by this ant-like kid like it was a toy. The venerable master felt humiliated. This kind of humiliation could only be erased by killing Bufang once and for all. I've said, hand it over, the venerable master bellowed. His voice surged forward like waves of energy. The crushed rocks on the ground began to tumble. In that instant, Xiao Bai's eyes turned purple. The giant machete appeared in front of Bufang, shielding him. The blade gleamed as it slashed at the Shura's sect venerable master. Get lost. The venerable master was enraged. He casually waved his hand and collided with Xiao Bai's slash. Boom! Under the venerable master's palm, Xiao Bai couldn't help but take a step back. His purple eyes flickered incessantly. A sharp pain surged through him. The venerable master lowered his head to look at his palm, only to discover that there was a bloody gash on his palm. He, a mighty mid-stage supreme being warrior, was injured by an iron puppet. A 9th-grade puppet, huh? I've underestimated you. The venerable master sneered. However, he wasn't the least bit afraid. A mere puppet was nothing to be afraid of. To a supreme being warrior, a puppet was just a puppet. Bufang was slightly taken aback. This was the first time he saw Xiao Bai being forced back. The old man in front of him had a really high cultivation level. Pitch-black true energy burst forth from the venerable master's body. Then, a pack of true energy wolves materialized in front of him. These wolves were formed from black true energy. Their eyes emitted a bloodthirsty luster as they stared at Xiao Bai. The wolves howled and charged toward Xiao Bai. The blade flickered as Xiao Bai brandished his machete and slashed at the wolves. The true energy wolves were all chopped into pieces. Xiao Bai's mechanical body was as solid as a boulder. He wasn't afraid of the wolves' bites. The venerable master narrowed his eyes. This was the first time he had seen such a peculiar puppet. Even the famous puppet sect in the Hidden Dragon continent didn't have such a strange puppet. However, no matter what kind of puppet it was, since it dared to stop him from retrieving the Soul Congregation array, he would dismantle it. The venerable master took a step forward. His energy surged and he appeared in front of Xiao Bai. He clenched his fist and smashed it toward Xiao Bai as if he was going to break a mountain. Whitey blocked the attack with its machete, and with a loud explosion, its entire body was sent flying backward, crashing into the ground, causing the ground to shatter into jagged rocks. Bufang looked at Xiao Bai being suppressed by the venerable master and furrowed his brows. Although Xiao Bai's injuries were insignificant because he was a robot, he couldn't go on like this. With a thought, the black turtle constellation walk appeared in his right hand once again. The pitch-black, unadorned black turtle constellation walk emitted a heavy aura. True energy gushed out, pouring into the black turtle constellation walk. The black tortoise pattern on the black turtle constellation walk suddenly emitted light. That unassuming black walk suddenly turned into a golden walk. It became as resplendent as the golden dragon bone kitchen knife. Grabbing the cold edge of the black turtle constellation walk, Bufang took a deep breath. Then, he expressionlessly threw the black turtle constellation walk. The golden black turtle constellation walk carried a terrifying aura like a vast mountain as it smashed toward the venerable master. Wherever it passed, it was as if the air was smashed into pieces. After punching Xiao Bai once again, the venerable master instantly raised his head and saw the golden walk that was smashing toward him. What is this? A half-divine tool? The venerable master furrowed his brows and punched toward the black turtle constellation walk. Boom! The fist and the black turtle constellation walk collided. The venerable master's face instantly changed. He felt as if his fist had smashed into a solid mountain. His fist was a little numb. This F***, the true energy in his body surged. The venerable master changed his fist into a palm, and both palms simultaneously patted on the black turtle constellation Wa. His body moved horizontally for a distance in the air, but in the end, he managed to intercept the black turtle constellation Wa. This walk that could knock out the blood guards was ultimately unable to deal with a true venerable master. Bufang felt a little regretful. The true energy in his body had been consumed by more than half in an instant. This black turtle constellation Wok consumed more true energy than the golden dragon bone kitchen knife. As the true energy dispersed, the black turtle constellation Wok also dissipated with a bang. Then, it gathered in front of Bufang and was grabbed by Bufang's hand. It's actually a half-divine tool. A 9th grade Supreme Being level puppet. Such a mystical half-divine tool. Who exactly are you? It's impossible for the forces of the southern region to cultivate an existence like you. Don't tell me you're from outside the southern region? The venerable master's hands were a little numb. He shook them off, but his gaze was fixed on Bufang. Blackie, who was lying on the ground, heard the venerable master's words. Its dog ears instantly twitched. It slightly raised its dog head and looked at the venerable master with a solemn expression. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.